red light. Stop right there where you are. Hello, and welcome to yet another edition
Hello.
of TFC podcast, which, you know, as always,
Yeah.
stands for Tremendously Funny Comedians Podcast.
Oh wow, that's really good.
As ever, I'm Matty. I still don't know what to intro myself with.
You're still facing that sort of moral dilemma.
100
It's
podcasts in,
yeah.
I still always go, oh, I'm not really sure.
Well, you're also 54 years into your life.
Yeah, really old.
Yeah. What's this auto sharing in 2 minutes and 15 seconds on Ustream? I wonder what that is.
I don't know, but we'll never
We'll find out what that.
If that just explodes.
Yeah. I'm Phil. Hello, ladies, in particular. How's it going?
Ooh, that's cool. That's smooth.
Yeah.
They'll be picking right.
What they
on
didn't
that.
see though is that I pointed at the mic
and clicked.
So, clicked it. So
In one smooth motion.
Well, you know.
Did we release an episode last week, or was I away?
I can check.
Because I remember recording
really know.
a podcast, but I have no idea when we released it.
Yeah, neither do I. Right, let's have a
So
look.
we might have been
Just
away.
go to tfcpodcast.com.
Clever plug.
Yeah. June 22nd was episode 5. When was that?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. So we didn't have one last week.
Because of course I was at the orphanage.
Yeah. Of course you were.
The orphanage, it was on fire and burnt half my body to a crisp.
Yeah. Yeah, you could still, your face is pseudo-crammed up. You've still
Yeah.
got pseudo-cram on your face.
Blistered to fuck. My
So that's
arms,
good.
skin's just falling right off that. Clumps of my whole body is just giving up.
You're deteriorating.
Yeah.
I was reading earlier on about a thing called Cotard's delusion.
Yeah.
Because you know I told you earlier on I watched Synecdoche, New York yesterday.
Mm.
Well, the main character is called something, I can't remember what, Cotard. His surname is Cotard.
Yeah.
And apparently there's a delusion in psychology where you sort of think that you're dead, or you think that parts of your body are like falling off and shit.
Wow.
It's really weird.
And then does it fall off?
No, I don't think so.
Because I suppose if you sort of overrode your brain
Yeah.
to the point where you're like, well, my foot's dead.
Yeah.
If you genuinely 100% believe that,
Yeah.
then would your body...
I don't know. Well, there are these Tibetan monks,
Yeah.
Matt, in Tibet.
Tibet.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably Tibet.
There's this thing that these Tibetan monks do where they cover themselves in like icy blankets,
Yeah.
and then they concentrate so hard that they like dry the blankets with their body and like steam comes off them. Can't remember what it's called,
That's fucking awesome.
but it's insane. Like they use their mind to sort of affect their body. It's
I love
crazy.
monks. I love crazy monks.
I'm a big fan of monks. I'm a big monk fan.
I love the Japanese monks that just do like
Junks.
a marathon a day for 150 days of the year,
Yeah.
and then go and fast for like 9 days.
I could do that.
It's well impressive.
I could easily do that. I just don't want to.
And if they don't do it, they have to kill themselves.
What? Is that true?
Yeah, if they're doing the run, they have to do it covering a certain amount of kilometres a day,
Yeah.
or however much. If they give up,
Yeah.
and they've got a sword with them and they have to fall on it.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, what's it called? Seppuku or whatever
Yeah.
it's called.
And,
Is that legal in Japan? Can you kill yourself?
I was watching, I don't know, if you're up in a mountain and you're a monk, you do what you like.
I suppose so.
I was watching a documentary about it, and they showed this guy running past, he's like, oh
Yeah.
look, there's somebody's like sandals or whatever it were.
Ooh,
He killed himself.
Jesus.
Only,
Was it just like a pair of steaming boots?
only a certain amount of people have ever done it, and this guy done it twice. or
So
something.
what is it? What is it that they do?
It's like a religious
Have a-
passagey type thing.
Have a run.
And they do, I think it's 100 kilometres a day or a week for the first, and then they build up and build up and build up, and then after they've done all the running,
Yeah.
they chill out
Oh yeah.
and just do 9 days fasting and constant meditation.
When you say 9 days fasting, I imagine they have like a cup soup.
Probably just have
Like a breadstick.
super noodles.
Just one pack of super noodles. The extra saucy ones though.
Yeah.
Chopped ham in it, just for sustenance. Because otherwise
Yeah,
you'll be really hungry.
You'll be well hungry.
Yeah.
They're called the Kahayogo.
Oh yeah. Kahayoko. Got that second album somewhere.
Stop it. From
Come on.
Mount Hiei.
No, Haye.
They're from the Shingengu and the Tendai schools of Buddhism.
I'd appreciate if you stopped making up words. That'd be nice.
Okay, so right, here you go. It was even more crazy than I thought. It's a 1,000-day challenge,
Yeah.
and it takes 7 years to complete,
Yeah.
and it's divided into 100-day sections. So in year 1, you run 30 kilometres a day for 100 days.
Right.
You do that for 3 years, and then you do 30 for 200 for 2 years, then you do 60 for 100, and then in year 7,
Yeah.
you do 84 for 100, followed by just a small 30 for another 100.
Fucking hell.
And then after you've done that, during the 5th year of the challenge, the running is punctuated by the 9 days without water, food, or rest of any kind.
Yeah.
He sits in the temple and prays constantly. 2 monks accompany him, one on either side, to ensure he doesn't fall asleep. And at 2 a.m. every night, he must get up to fetch sacrificial water from the well, around 200 metres away. And I watched the documentary. In the first day, he toddles out and gets it. By the 9th day, he's literally being held up.
Fucking hell.
It's so fucking incredible.
Whereas when I look at some monks like sitting up there in the mountain doing amazing things, I'm like, wow, that's crazy. That's really impressive. But then some of them do things like this. Like, how is that help? What is that doing? How many people have ever done it?
I think it's something ridiculous, like 6 or something.
I wonder if those 6 people can attest to it having improved their life, or if they're like, yeah, don't do it.
The mountain that they run around has many unmarked graves from those who have failed in their quest and killed themselves, although none date from either the 20th or the 21st century.
That's alright then. I suppose they've got St. John's, haven't they? Ambulances.
There are many serving troops. All the other monks are just volunteering.
yeah.
To get their Duke of Edinburgh right.
They've got like fold out tables with just sandwiches.
That is amazing. I don't know how you'd even begin to do something like that.
That's thoroughly wild. I'm just going to walk around the microphone and have some water.
That's fine. I could have passed it to you, but it's fine.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm very active. I'm like a monk. I'm like one of those Jahako, what is it? Subako monks.
Kai Hyogo.
Yeah.
I don't know how people do that kind of thing. It's all about like faith and belief and...
Yeah, it's all about like self-determination and stuff like that, which I have absolutely zero of. So I'd be terrible at that. I'm sure I would think that I'd be able to do it, and then I'd just collapse like halfway through day 1.
I'm sure they wouldn't allow day 1. I'm sure they wouldn't
allow me to do it. Why not? I could do it. I'll be fine. I remember thinking when I was younger, like, oh, if I ever smoked, I could just quit like that. I'd just stop. It's easy.
Yeah.
But then...
You can't. It's very difficult.
yeah. I realised that, like, I always thought that I was a really determined person, but whenever I'm tested at that, I'm absolutely not.
Go,
I have no motivation. Yeah, I'll have a sit down.
I'll have a sit.
Yeah. Right, I'm going to do 4 push-ups. No, I'll just do half of 1.
Yeah.
I've
thought about it, so that's fine.
yeah. That is part of it, isn't it? You know, thinking about it. So,
yeah.
So that's...
It's half the battle.
Yeah, easily half. Easily 50%.
Probably at least 70% of the battle.
At least 70%
Just
of
thinking
that,
about
which
it.
essentially is 75%.
Yeah.
So that's...
Which is near 100% of the battle.
What is that,
so.
7/8?
Something, yeah.
So that's pretty much 100%.
We've done that.
Yeah, we've done that though. We've just done 4 or 5 push-ups each. Bingo, that's in. Shall we go into the podcast now? Are we on?
Should we do a podcast? Are we on? I hope we're not.
Yeah, we are.
Oh dear. Yeah, we should probably do a podcast. You may remember last episode.
Epi, please.
Epi, which is obviously short for episode.
Yeah.
We chatted about gaming.
Yep, which was a risky manoeuvre because you don't have any interest in games whatsoever.
I've not played any games either before or since that podcast.
Yeah. A lot of tiles, a lot of Mahjong.
I played Candy Crush earlier.
Oh, did you?
Got to level 80, then realised I have to ask friends for more lives, so I got annoyed.
I keep getting people I've not talked to in like 10 years. Well, that's an exaggeration. Talking to me on Facebook, like, oh, can I have something on Candy Crush? I'm like, no, fuck off. Eat one, bitch. Don't play your little Candy Crush game.
Eat dicks, great game though. Great game.
I'm sure it is a great game. Isn't it just Bejeweled?
A lot of people are hating on it. There's been a lot of...
Oh, really? But that's what happened. Well, I bet we'll talk about this later. But when something gets very popular, people begin to hate it.
Oh, that's true.
And
also,
it's currently like as popular as Farmville used to be. So it's like...
It doesn't help that they try and squeeze money out of you at any possible opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I think we might have talked about this last episode, but games, that's what games are now, isn't it?
Motherfuckers.
Fucking
money-making
corporate.
machines.
Oh, the man. Tell you what.
Stick it to him.
Yeah.
I would.
I would, but I'm busy.
Yeah, I've got loads
and lazy as well, yeah. Very lazy.
Well, I've thought about being lazy, not really.
You've thought about it, so you essentially are.
Yeah.
Halfway there.
Halfway to doing it.
Anyway, what's TFC? What's going on? Where are we?
We are, this week, we selected from our little list.
We need to expand this list soon because we're going to go through it. We sort of wrote down a list of like 10 or 12 topics.
And then we just like
Talk
pick a
about-
number. 12. Oh,
Yeah,
that'll do.
we'll do that one.
And one of the broadest ones we had was comedy.
Yeah,
And we picked that right out of the hat.
yeah.
That came right out. So we sort of narrowed it down in
Just
a way
stand-up comedy.
to stand-up comedy. The comedy that we're best at,
Yeah.
other than, you know,
It's my forte.
audio comedy.
Audio comedy, yeah, that's also my forte.
And
Written comedy.
written.
All the comedies,
All
comedy,
comedy,
all comedies,
comedy.
yeah.
That's on the CV, so
That's on the CV.
wouldn't be on the CV if I wasn't really good at
Have you
it.
got a green tick next to it?
Yeah,
Real.
verified.
Have you seen you can verify Facebook pages now? We need to get TFC verified.
How would we go about doing that?
I think you have to be a notable person. I don't think we can actually do it.
Well,
We can try.
there's loads of us.
I don't know how you get Twitter profiles verified either, but
They contact you, apparently.
do they
You have
like
to
talk
give
to your
them, like-
people or something?
You have to give them a home address, and they send you something, apparently, and then you, like, put it... Oh, this is what I heard on a podcast, so it could be bullshit.
Is it not only for like celebs
I think...
like you and I?
I don't know. I don't know the nature of it. Because you get people who just have loads of followers, but are nobodies.
Yeah. Then you get people who are pretty famous.
Yeah, who aren't, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I don't know the nature of Twitter. I don't actually run it
Don't
anymore.
know the nature of the beast. No, you left, didn't you? To
Yeah,
do
I
Napster.
sold everything out.
Yeah.
Bought up Bebo.
People.
And
Justin Timberlake owns MySpace now.
does he own it?
Yeah. After doing that Facebook movie.
That's
He's like,
weird.
yeah, I own MySpace now, bitch.
What's he going to do with it?
I don't know. Well, I think he's owned it for a while, so
Does he just put like his music on it? He just puts
probably
lyrics.
yeah. He's accidentally bought it when he meant to just make a profile. He just updates everyone's status. At
Everyone's
the same time.
favourite song is just Justin Timberlake, Cry Me a River.
Yeah, that wasn't even him, was it?
He did a cover of it.
Oh yeah, it's Black Eyed Peas, isn't it?
I could play you Justin Timberlake's, but I'm not going to.
JT's, yeah, do it.
Well, I'll have to load up my iTunes.
No, don't do that then. That's
Right.
a ball ache.
It just,
Well, you can do it.
just takes too long. But no, stand-up comedy.
Stand-up comedy, yeah.
My favourite of the comedies.
You suggested that we narrow it down to stand-up, and
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it, but that is quite a good idea because we could probably squeeze out like 20 or so episodes. Oh, hello.
I'll just skip it
We'll
forward.
just have that in the background. This is a testament to how brave we are, Matt. We just play copyrighted music
We
on
do.
air.
But
we
we
don't
only play
care, we
like
don't give
10
a care.
seconds of it, so
Well, you know,
that's
all
probably fine. That's probably hopefully fine.
No, you're not allowed to play any. That's,
is that
that's
the
the
rules?
rule, yeah.
Oh.
I looked into it because that's everyone always says, "Oh, you play it 10 seconds,"
Yeah,
but it's actually like any amount of copyright music.
that's
We'll be
annoying.
fine.
Yeah,
Play
well,
more if anything.
Yeah, just
I
come
might stick
constantly.
Mbop on.
Mbop, doop-a-da-ba-da, mbop.
What a great song. What was that song we listened to earlier and it lasted forever?
Don't stop till you get enough. MJ.
Stick that right on.
That's 6
Because
minutes long.
he's not alive anymore, is he? So it's a victimless crime.
Yeah,
Even though it is a crime and it is naughty.
and we probably would go to prison.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, we're badasses, so that's sort
Well, I'm
of thing we
badass
do.
anyway.
Yeah, you're badass enough for both of us.
Yeah, yeah.
I just
I
thought,
was thinking
I'm
of
not
getting
really.
a tattoo once. I didn't because it hurt.
Yeah.
But that
I had-
makes me quite
I had a
badass.
temporary one.
Oh, did
At the
you?
weekend, it was a love heart.
Was
and
it from a bubblegum packet?
No, it was from a charity stall
Oh,
at a
right,
music
gotcha.
festival.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Was
It's
it a love
got-
heart? Did it say mum?
Yeah, it said "Love Mum" and it had a teapot in it.
Did it?
Yeah, it was some kind of charity reuniting families or something. I wasn't really paying attention.
No, you just need it for the
Yeah,
tats.
just so I could be like, "Oh, what's this?"
Just point over there.
Festival tattoo. Stop it.
Oh dear. Stand up. Were there any stand ups at Glasgow? Obviously not. There were.
Yeah, there were.
Were there?
In the cabaret tent.
It's pronounced cabaret.
Don't think so.
Not really.
Yeah, there's loads in the cabaret tent.
Who was there?
I saw
Notable.
Brendan Burns.
Didn't he talk to you once at a stand up thing?
He did, yeah. Because he said he was going to go.
Yeah. He said he was going to go.
He said he was gonna go
That's
to-
me and anything. Boo! He was like, leave me alone.
He said he was going to watch the UFC, and everyone was sort of like, oh, I don't really know
Yeah.
what that is. And I was like, yay! He was like, oh, at least one person knows.
Is that Matt from TFC? Oh my god. What are you doing out here with us normal folk?
I've completely lost my Australian accent and I've gone a bit up north.
Eat by a gun, good heck.
Yeah, I saw Brendan
Fine.
Burns. He did a great joke about arse rape.
Oh, go on.
I can't. I
No, do it.
wouldn't be able to do it justice.
No, go on.
But he was
Do his accent.
talking about Michael Barrymore. He was doing a bit of dated material.
Oh, yeah.
Talking about
What was he talking about? Barrymore.
Michael Barrymore and how
My middle name's Michael and my surname's Barry, so...
you Michael Barrymore.
Well, I'm not, but am I? I could be.
But of just screaming about arse rape into this guy's face, and it was very funny.
That's great.
It's it's pretty funny. There was loads of people there. I saw Mark Watson, the little Welsh guy.
Oh,
from the
yeah.
Side Adverts. He was there.
He's
he was
alright.
pretty funny.
He's not too bad.
He didn't talk about cider.
That's weird.
He did talk about the Rolling Stones. So.
That is very weird.
Andy Parsons was there.
Andy Parsons. I'm not a big fan of Andy Parsons.
I didn't see him,
No,
but he was there.
What's that Stuart Lee joke about cider?
Give it to me straight.
Give it to me straight like a
pear
pear cider made from 100% pears.
That's such a funny joke. Some people just don't get it.
Stuart Lee's definitely one of my favourite stand-ups, in Britain especially.
Yeah. Well, as always, we made a little bit of a list with our little bullet
Talking
points
points.
and stuff.
Yeah.
And top of that was comedians, what we like,
Yeah.
stroke dislike,
Yeah.
and stuff.
Worded thusly.
Worded thusly. And I think, Stuart Lee he's always been hilarious, but I think he's got more mainstream attention now than
I
he
think
ever
I
has before.
think he seems to really dislike that.
But does he dislike that, or is that just
Well,
him?
I don't know. Probably. I don't know. He seems to be one of those comedians who's like, he sort of takes it very seriously, like it's his art.
Yeah.
So he's very sort of, very word.
But I think that shows with his material. It's so much crisper, so much better performed. It's all performance as well of it is always very good. He's got that very sort of deadpan-y.
Yeah.
And there's the joke.
I think one of the things with people like Stuart Lee is that he's not his. I think he's probably past the point now where he needs a laugh for like security's sake. Like there are a lot of comedians who do things that they know are going to get laughs because they couldn't stand going up and telling a joke that isn't going to get laughs. So they do it by the books, like observational things, which is fine. But then with people, there are some more sort of intellectual comedians who will do jokes that just won't work in like 90% of rooms, but they'll still use it because it's like.
I think that must be a
they care
really difficult part of being a stand-up comedian, especially if you're something different. Is finding that audience.
Yeah.
Finding the audience that will come and know what your material will be, and then doing it to them and they'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
And the period before that where, maybe 90% of people you just don't make any sense.
Yeah.
Or you bomb.
But then it's also moving past that and sort of having the conviction to stick to that 10% rather than appealing to the 90%.
Which is where a lot of people probably just go now, just appeal to the 90%, and make some more money.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that, per se.
No, there's nothing wrong with it. And there are some comedians who are sort of very mainstream who are good. Like, I think most comedians who are very sort of mainstream and popular are quite good.
You don't get successful if you're not funny.
Yeah.
But people are funny for different reasons. You look at someone like Michael McIntyre, Lee Evans, Peter Kay. These are all funny people, but they're not doing any groundbreaking material.
No, yeah.
Lee Evans' entire act is, here's some sort of observational humour done with my very sort of madcap Jim Carrey-esque body.
Yeah.
And it's funny. It's funny to see a man run around to the point where his suit is soaking wet.
Yeah. It makes you laugh, but not to a... Like, you don't really remember it half an hour later because it's sort of... It was funny at the time and then that's it. Doesn't really make you think. It's not evocative in any way, but that's fine. It doesn't have to be.
It does the job.
Yeah.
All those people are famous, very, very famous because of that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. I know a lot of people, like we were saying before we came on air, when somebody becomes super popular, it then becomes like the fad to dislike them.
Was that before we came on air?
I don't know.
Neither do I.
May have
The
been.
line is blurred.
If you heard it, well done.
Yeah. Congrats.
But as soon as someone becomes, the biggest selling comedian, everyone's like, they're shit, they're sellouts, they're this.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
I don't think, anyway.
I mean, there are some comedians, like you say, like that become really popular, and then people like them up to a point, and then as soon as they become that popular headliner, who's like ubiquitous, a lot of people just hate them. And I think that, like Dane Cook is a really good example of that. because he was very, very well liked for a long time, and then everyone started liking him, and then a lot of people turned against him.
Yeah,
He's like,
he's
oh, it's
the
easy to
comedian
like
to
him.
hate.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that a part of that comes from a part of saying like, oh, I hate something, is that makes you feel like an authority on the subject. It makes you feel sort of intelligent and like you know what you're talking about.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've never really thought of it like that.
But it's not necessarily the case though, because anyone can say like, oh, I hate things, and it doesn't really make you an intelligent. It's not a well-reasoned argument to just say, oh, that's shit.
Yeah, unless you have a reason for it.
And even then, it's still just an opinion. Like a lot of comedy is one of those things,
It's
stand-up comedy,
subjective.
where people give people shit for liking, like the
Certain
Michael
people.
McIntyres, the Lee Evanses, the Dane Cooks. You
But
know?
I like these people. I was saying here the comedians we dislike, and I thought about it for a while. There's not comedians that I dislike as such. There are comedians that I'll watch and go, okay, not a huge amount of it was funny, but some of it was. I'm not going to pay to go and see you, but I wasn't actively disliking anything you were doing.
I think there are probably some comedians that I dislike. I can't put my finger on any of them though.
There's
I think I said earlier Andy Parsons.
Yeah, there's material
Something about his delivery that I
or
don't like.
styles that I don't particularly like. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's on Mock the Week a lot, and he always does really sort of strange humour. Michael Miles something. Got long hair.
Does he wear like colourful shirts?
And he's quite
Can't
old, and
remember
he
his
does
name.
like, how many flip flops can you fit in a?
Yeah.
And it's really funny once, but I couldn't ever
It's all
imagine watching an hour and a half set of it.
I think that is almost like a mainstream version of the sort of quirky, offbeat, surreal humour. Like, what's the guy's name? The guy who's really famous for that, he died. So he had a joke about like
Mitch Hedberg.
Yeah. Like it's like his sort of style, but in a very accessible way.
Yeah. Mitch Hedberg isn't, I don't think, very accessible.
Well, he became very popular because he is very funny. But that guy, I can't remember what the guy's name is, but that guy you were talking about,
or something.
he's like he has really messy hair, like he's crazy. But obviously he does that before the show with hairspray before he comes on. He's not really that person. He's like playing the character of
Miles Jupp is not the guy I was thinking of. That's the guy from Balamory.
Does he look similar?
Who played Archie the inventor in Balamory. Although he's a comedian.
Of the week.
But
let's see.
Yeah, there's a lot of comedians who I wouldn't want to see an hour and a half set of. I don't think. But there's not many that I actively dislike. There's a lot of comedians who do sets or material about stuff I don't empathise with or really understand.
Yeah.
But then not everyone's going to appeal to you for that reason. So
Yeah, that's true.
there's very few that I actively dislike.
Rory Bremer, that might be him.
It's not him.
No, that's not him at all. He's the guy from
Brenda Bird of Fortune.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking he's from Dead Ringers, is it? I don't know, one of those sort of impressionist things.
He's from one of those shows. I don't think it's Dead Ringers. He did the political one, Brenda Bird and Fortune, on Channel 4.
Maybe.
It's probably that
Is
one.
it though? Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I don't really know comedians I dislike. I'm on the Mock the Week roster now. For people who haven't seen Mock the Week, for people who are not from England maybe, it's like the sort of successor to Whose Line Is It Anyway, isn't it? I suppose.
Although
it's
Whose
like a
Line Is It
panel
Anyway
show.
is still going on.
Yeah, but it's like it's spun off from that, I think, because they use a lot of the same sort of games, but it's also more of a panel show where they talk about the week's news and stuff like that. The comedians on Mock the Week are Hugh Dennis.
Yeah.
He's quite good.
Not really stand-up though, is he?
No, well, he might do stand-up, I'm not sure. But he's more of a comic actor. Dara O'Brien, he's really good.
Yeah, he was very funny.
Andy Parsons, not a huge fan of Andy Parsons. Chris Addison, again, I don't know if he does stand-up.
Yeah, he does do stand-up.
Is it any good?
It's okay. It's
Oh, I've seen his stand-up, actually.
it's a little bit.
It's quite sort of rudimentary.
Yeah.
And sort of.
It's okay. He's quite a funny guy though, actor-wise. He's in the loop and thick of it.
Yeah,
and stuff
I
like
think
that.
he's the sort of person who was a sort of comic actor and then probably went into stand-up later. I'm
I
not sure
imagine
if that's
he's a
the
very
case, but
funny writer.
yeah. I wonder if he's ever written anything. Frankie Boyle.
Frankie Boyle's one of those polarising figures in especially British comedy at the minute. You get people who love him you get people who hate him, and you get people who love him because you think it's cool to love him because he says
Yeah.
cunt a lot.
I think he sort of became a character of himself almost immediately.
But if you
Because
watch
he started off as a writer, didn't he?
yeah, if you watch those old Mark Me Weeks before he was like quite a famous stand-up,
Yeah.
he's really funny. He's very quick and witty.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes he'd be like, fucking this, and go off on a bit of a tangent. But then he did a stand-up where he was like very crude's not the word, but sort of very
Sort of angry and
angry, X-rated-y type.
yeah. Like he
Jokes
did,
about disabilities,
Yeah,
all
jokes
that
about-
kind of shock jocking, I suppose
Yeah.
it's called. And like it became a hit for certain reasons. He got good press for it, he got bad press for it, but he was in the public eye. And then as soon as he became Britain's like shock jock,
yeah,
he sort of
Britain's
just-
angry guy.
he just rolled with it.
Yeah, I think he sort of noticed that worked, and then just wrote for that.
And I think that's where his material has just gone down the pan a bit, because it's too easy to just be like, he looks like a fucking spastic,
Yeah.
instead of making a funny joke.
Again, talking about Stuart Lee, there was one of his stand-ups a couple of years back where he talked about Frankie Boyle, and he said that Frankie Boyle said in an interview or something
Yeah.
that when he becomes 40 he's going to stop doing comedy because at age 40 you can no longer do comedy because you stop being angry and you lose your anger.
Yeah.
And that's such a sort of misunderstanding of what it is to be a comedian, because you don't have to be angry,
Angry to be a
do
comedian.
comedy.
But that's
And then-
further proof that he's just playing his role. He's just playing
Well,
a
yeah,
stereotypical angry comedian.
I don't know if he knows what he's doing, because he started off as a writer and he presumably was quite a funny writer. I can't remember what he wrote for, but he obviously did well enough for people to say you should do stand-up, and then he did stand-up and he did it very... He's almost like the sort of pop alternative analogy to music. Like, I don't know what example, like Green Day or something. It's like people feel like they're being very alternative when they listen to it, but it's still sort of
Yeah.
very popular and very sort of...
Well,
Pre-made.
people, because he's Scottish, people always compare him to Jerry Sadowitz, who I don't know if you've ever seen.
I'm not sure if it is.
He's like a magician who like did magic within his stand-up,
Yeah.
and he was very famous for being really explicit and stuff, sick humour type stuff. But he's really funny, and he takes like great offence to being
Oh, really?
compared to him.
How old is he? Is he...
51 now.
Was he famous like a few decades back?
Yeah, he was famous, but of course he's not very rarely on television,
Yeah.
because he produced one of the most famous lines of the era. Yeah, this is it. Nelson Mandela, what a cunt.
I think I've heard that, yeah.
But yeah, he was famous for being like really funny, but for being very very out there,
Yeah.
very sort of aggressive to audiences and stuff.
Mm.
Here you go. He did a performance in Montreal, which started with the greeting, "Hello, moose fuckers. I tell you why I hate Canada. Half of you speak French and the other half let them." But yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah. I wonder how many really good comedians there are working who just refuse to be on TV, so they never
Well, I'll tell you,
like gain
a
exposure.
comedian who's very rarely on television now, but is one of the most loved stand-ups in Britain, is that Daniel Kitson.
Daniel Kitson, who is that?
He's the guy with the big beard and the stuttery and the glasses.
Oh, yeah. He's on a lot of panel shows though, isn't he? Oh no, I'm thinking of someone else. Right, the guy who was in Phoenix Nights.
Yeah, he was in Phoenix Nights and wrote a lot of it,
Yeah.
and then had some issues, I think, with Peter Kay.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, where he didn't get enough credit or
Oh,
something like that. He has a reputation for shunning television work.
Yeah, he's quite good. I've seen some of his stand-up before, and it's that sort of alternative thing again, where it wouldn't work on like a lot of people wouldn't find him funny, but the people who do find him very funny. One of those sorts of people.
I've not seen a lot of Daniel Kitson stuff.
I've seen one. I saw one that probably wasn't televised because it was on YouTube and it was like filmed from a phone
Yeah.
or something.
I've got some recordings on like iTunes,
Yeah.
but I've not really listened to a lot of them. But people love him, so
Yeah.
he's got to be funny for some, for a reason. And he's won so many like Edinburgh Fringe Awards, and I'm not saying they're the be all and end all, but there's a reason. There's a reason someone's successful.
Yeah. You can all say that really for all like famous comedians
Yeah.
that I don't like. There's going to be loads of people out there who do like them. So
That's true. That's very true.
it's very subjective comedy, stand-up comedy, and comedy in general. I suppose it'd be quite unlucky to want to be a stand-up comic and you just happen to have a sense of humour that doesn't resonate with a lot of people, because you'll never really make it. Because people are very unforgiving when it comes to stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
Like it's one of the only things where heckling is a huge thing, because people won't tolerate like a bad comedian.
I'm not sure why, if that makes sense. I understand people pay to see funny people,
Yeah.
but you have to let people advance their act. You can't go up and just expect everyone to be perfect all the time.
Yeah, like I think probably most comedians probably started out very badly, or at least bombed a lot when they started out.
Well, that's a lot of comedians say that, don't they? That
Yeah.
to be a successful comedian, you have to go through bombing
Yeah.
or just not being very successful for years. If you look at people who are sort of known to be the best of the best, look at like Richard Pryor and Carlin and Hicks and people like that, they weren't successful immediately.
Yeah.
Like Richard Pryor, I watched the documentary on him recently. He did like several years just being very straight-laced and
Yeah.
I'm just a black guy,
Yeah.
before he went into the yo motherfucker.
Yeah.
I never want to see no police in my life at my house taking my ass to jail. Stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably the same for almost any like skill. Like you start off really badly,
Yeah.
but it's probably amplified with that stand-up comedy for a few reasons. I think one of them is that, again, it's very harsh. Like people will give you shit for not being good, so it sticks out like a sore thumb when you're no good at the start. And also, I think it's because people expect it to be so easy.
Yeah, it's one of those things everyone says, oh, I could be a good stand-up.
Yeah.
Because everyone in their own mind is pretty funny. Everyone tells
Yeah.
funny jokes.
And everyone can talk, and that's all it looks on the surface like people are just talking.
Just talking to a
like
crowd.
saying funny things.
But it's not at all.
Yeah.
There's the art form of knowing what jokes to go where
Yeah.
to build an audience, to then drop them to build them. And it's something I don't know I could do. I like to think, in the back of my mind, I always go, oh yeah, if I wanted to,
Yeah, so do I.
I could put some work in and I'll be good at it.
Yeah, but I think if I actually tried to do it, there would be so many variables that I didn't expect
Think about, yeah.
that would just like come at me and just ruin it.
I always think I would have the performance side of it down.
Yeah.
I think I'd be quite good at going out there and performing the
Yeah.
material and just being like, yeah, whoa, building and sort of manipulating a little bit. But I don't know if I could write a
Funny
good
enough
enough set,
Yeah.
especially like an hour. It's a long time.
Yeah. I suppose you wouldn't have to worry about that at the start though.
We just
No
have
one
to
would
do,
give you an hour.
5 or 10 minutes, but
People
then
often-
that's difficult because you're writing such a short amount.
Yeah.
There's no like intro really. You have to sort of just go into it.
Yeah.
It's very tricky.
I imagine it's very tricky. I've never done it.
I'd
but
like to try it.
I'd sort of like to try it, but I know that it would just ruin my self-esteem, because I know that I'd do badly and just people would just boo me and like I don't know if I could handle it.
I don't know if people would boo you. It depends where you
Yeah,
go
I suppose
on.
it depends where you do it, but I don't know. Especially if I think people are more likely to boo you if you think that you're going to do really well
Yeah.
and you do really bad. Like if you've got the swagger but you're not funny at all, that's like a recipe for people
Yeah.
to just hate you. So it's
There's
one of those things.
If you're arrogant in any way as a stand-up comedian, people are always going to hate you. If you
Yeah.
look at like really arrogant, brash comedians that aren't
Yeah.
really brash, just performance, they always get a lot of
Yeah.
hate. Someone like Andrew Dice Clay is always
Yeah.
like walks up, like he shakes his arms out, puts his collar up, sparks a cigarette, like he's doing it on his own. Like he knows everyone's looking at him, but he's just taking it. People are always going like, he's a smug cunt, etc., etc. It's a
But
really,
with him though, it's a character more than
Yeah,
well, I suppose it's less of a character now, but
it's a really clever way of just getting on stage,
Yeah.
knowing what you're doing, getting everyone looking at you. In the same way that people go, and then don't start, like go,
yeah,
and then put it back, and you know, it's
like
clever.
getting attention from the room.
Definitely. Oh, just some water.
Yeah, I would love some water. Yeah.
No, I'd love to give stand-up comedy a go. I think. I don't think it's anything I can ever do
I think.
as a career, but
Well, yeah, as a career, it'd be very difficult because you'd have to like do it for long enough and become good enough that you'd like make like you'd have to turn it into a source of income,
Yeah.
which would be very difficult. It's very difficult for any sort of skill, and that's the thing. I think people don't think of it as a skill, but it is. And when you look at any skill, like you look at someone singing, let's say, and it looks easy because it's just using your vocal cords. It looks very easy, but what you don't see is the years of practice
Work,
that went
yeah.
into it and the sort of preparation. So it's like because that's sort of under the surface and you don't see it, you don't consider it as a factor. So I think a lot of people think of going into stand-up and then don't realise that it's going to take years of practice and a lot of preparation, and you're really going to have to sort of know what you're doing to be able to do it at all.
yeah. I think as well, if you look at comedians, for the most part, like popular stand-up comedians,
Yeah.
very few of them have just appeared and been amazing for their entire career.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the big popular comedians, again, Carlin, Pryor, Hicks,
Yeah.
all those, they've done it for 30 years, but really what you only remember is a very short
Yeah.
5-6 year
Especially
period.
with like Carlin, Hicks, like they were doing it for years, like completely unknown, and then right at the end.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose less so with Carlin because he died quite recently, but with Bill Hicks, like
He only
like,
became
if you-
really
if-
famous after he died.
yeah, like if you look for a Bill Hicks DVD, you'll find like maybe one or two. Like I don't know how many specials he ever did,
I've
but
got one over there. Might have two over there.
watch it.
Totally Bill Hicks.
Totally Bill Hicks, yeah, I see it.
And
And
the
One
other
Night Stand. Like I don't know if he did any more than that, because like I mean he did in his career, but
Yeah.
that stuff was all before he was very sort of famous. When did he die? Like 93,
Yeah, I think
Like-
so.
quite a while ago, and now he's very popular, like 20 years after he's dead.
Yeah, he's been. It's almost cool to like him now, I suppose.
Again, he's like an alternative thing.
Yeah. And while I really do like Bill Hicks, think he's a very funny comedian, a lot of the stuff he does, a lot of his material is very specific to the time.
Yeah.
And so his way of like screamy and sort of angry persona is good, and his overall philosophy and concepts are good, and he's very funny and he puts jokes together very well. I can't laugh at the sort of first Gulf War comedy that's
Yeah,
in there,
yeah.
because I just wasn't
That's the same with Ed. Like when you go back and watch any comedy, it's always
very specific to
Yeah.
the time period.
well, even if it isn't, there's always something there that's like there's a bit of a disconnect.
Yeah, which is why comedians like Richard Pryor, who do whole sets on like what he's going through and his troubles rather than the world as it is so much easier to watch now,
Yeah.
because you just go, oh yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
Like George Carlin here, like he was active from 56 to 2008.
Yeah.
So that's 52 years.
Long time.
And yeah, it's not like he wasn't successful, but in the 60s he was just jobbing about here, there and everywhere. He did a few like Tonight Show performances. But it
I
was
think he's another one of those people who kind of resented the attention that he got at some point.
But I think it's like 80s and 90s, 2000, that's when he first became like
Yeah.
massive.
Mm.
But 1980 he was 40 odd years old.
Yeah.
Like there are so few comedians out there that are even going, I suppose, at that point. Like you're
Yeah.
saying about Frankie Bush, give it up at that age.
I think that's one of the things with comedy. That's one of the sort of barriers to entry is that by the time you're good enough to be on TV and like earn an income doing it, you'll probably have been doing it for like 20 years. Like
Yeah.
to be that good, you have to train in quotes for a long time to do that. And it's like with most sort of practices, skills, trades, whatever, that's fine because you can earn while you're doing it. But with stand-up comedy, the goal is always, for most people, the goal is to be known and liked and sort of,
Yeah. I think most people go into comedy as well just thinking of the big arenas and
Yeah,
making
yeah.
thousands of people laugh. Whereas the reality of it is, if we started today here,
yeah,
we'd have to go and do around the country to like 50 people
yeah.
a night just to get the
For,
practice in
for like
just
years
for
and
hours,
years. Yeah.
and to keep having the passion to make people laugh after you've done, say, 5-10 years of
Yeah.
tiny rooms and people calling you a cunt and heckling you just because they're drunk,
Yeah.
I think that will cut the wheat from the chaff on its own.
It'll probably whittle out a lot of the people who sort of
Can't be
are just in it because they want to be famous. Like after doing it for a few years and not being famous, a lot of people will just give up.
Yeah, I would. I think.
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
Well, it
I don't
depends.
wanna say I would, but-
If you want to be famous from it, then you're more likely to. But if you want to do it because you enjoy doing it and because that's your passion or whatever, then you're more likely to just stick with it.
You never know until you do it. Give it a shot.
Would you ever consider doing it? Are you ever going to do it, do you think?
I think I would consider doing it. Not as a career. I'd give it a shot. If someone was like, "Do you want to do it for a 5-10 minute set?" Well,
Yeah.
yeah, all right then. Why not?
But would you ever seek it out and do it?
No,
Like if-
I don't think so. Not unless I was in a very different place.
Yeah.
Unless someone came out to me and was like, "Oh, you know, it's open mic here, or do you want to do it?" Or
Yeah.
I was a bit drunk, and I suppose that's how a lot of it starts. There are the people who seek it out and enjoy doing it,
Yeah.
and then there are people who just stumble into it, and people are like, "Go on, you're funny, Dave."
Well, maybe, but then how many of those people who are just pushed into it are going to have the conviction to stick with it for several years
Yeah, but you get
after
the,
just having been like pushed on the stage by their mate?
if you get the performance like bug.
Well,
Right.
if you do it once and then the first time you do it, it's like really enjoyable. I
But
don't
there is
know
a
how
cer-
often that'd happen though.
There is a certain feeling of performing and controlling a room that is very addictive.
Yeah, but only when you do it well. Like if
Yeah,
you just go on
if you're doing it
stage,
shit, then it's never going to be appealing. But
I think 90% of people, if they have nothing prepared and just like someone just says go on stage and do
just
it,
wing it.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't think I could just wing it. I'd have to know in advance
yeah.
to lay out all my hilarious.
I'd
dirty
have
jokes.
I'd have to know in advance as well, but that'd also be like my undoing because it'd just eat me. I'd just be like, I'd just stress myself out about it. I'd just imagine myself bombing again and
Yeah.
again, and then it'd come up and I'd
I
do
think
it.
once you get it right, that's when you really get the bug, like you say, and that's why a lot of comedians have a lot of trouble, like off stage, or did, because there's no high like performing highs with anything.
Yeah.
So like you drink a lot and you do drugs.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
You have very terrible like outside lives.
I think Mike Tyson said something about that. I mean, he doesn't do comedy, but
He
he
does
said,
do a one-man show.
does
He
he?
did a one-man show in Vegas. Yeah.
Do you know if it's any good?
No idea. But I imagine it'll be interesting just for that.
It'd probably be a lot of people laughing at him.
Well,
rather
that's
than
that's a
laughing with
bit of his entire career now.
him. Yeah. But he said it's something to the effect of like it might not have been him, but someone said something like the high that you get from like a crowd of people cheering you on and like everyone in the world loving you, like there's nothing that'll match that,
Yeah.
and that's why people, like you say, that's why people turn to drugs because like the high that you get from like heroin or whatever isn't gonna get to that point, but it's something like.
Yeah, that's true. Especially when you're very successful at what you do. You know nothing's ever going to match that.
Yeah.
Again, that's why a lot of sports people, I suppose comedians as well, go on a bit too long.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to stop it.
Yeah.
You get it with, again, don't want to go wrestling on you, but you get it with wrestlers all the time. They just don't want to quit.
Yeah.
Because
so
they'll
they
just
stay
sit
far
at
too long.
So you stay on and then you've got old people wrestling and it's just embarrassing.
It's just like Batman said, Matty. You either live long enough to see yourself become the villain, or you die a hero.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true for lots of things. Like there are like any sort of really well liked figure that's
Yeah.
dead always died at the height of their career. Like there are all those people who
Yeah.
died at the age of 27, like Jimi Hendrix, Kurt Cobain.
Yeah. Janis Joplin.
Yeah, imagine if they'd have gone on for like 10, 20 years longer.
Well, I
And just
always-
like did adverts for soap and stuff like
yeah,
that.
exactly. I always think about that, especially with someone like Jimi Hendrix, who is a sort of...
Imagine him just on X Factor, like plastic surgery,
Because it's
judging people.
It's so likely that that would happen.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to make fantastic hit music
Yeah.
forever. And you're going to have to pay the bills. It's just the sad reality.
And also
of it.
that fame has got to drive you pretty crazy. Like, I always have respect for someone who's very famous and they've been famous for a while and they're not insane. Because that must be very difficult to keep your sanity.
I
Especially if you have a disposition to sort of becoming addicted to that what do you like attention or
Yeah.
like people liking you.
I could
drive you
I couldn't
insane.
hack it. There's so many in that 27 club though. I'm just looking at it from them now. Brian
You got a
Jones, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Linda Jones, Leslie Harvey, Dave Alexander, Pete Ham, Cecilia, Dee Boone,
I'm going to aim to be on that list.
Mia Zapata,
They die at 27.
Kurt Cobain, Richie Edwards, Amy Winehouse, Richard Turner. So just these are all just musicians as well. It's not even.
It's such a strange phenomenon that people just die at 27.
Well, Amy Winehouse.
I think
said
she
it
just
before,
went on
didn't
for a
she?
bit too long. Amy Winehouse.
Well, she was always like, "Well, I'm going to die at 27 anyway,"
Oh, did she?
because Marilyn Monroe died when she was 27, didn't she? She was like her idol or something.
Yeah. I think if Amy Winehouse died a few years earlier, she would be one of the legends. I think she just went on too long. She just sort of dropped. It's like that bell curve. She just sort of went.
Yeah.
She just went out on the sort of downward slope.
One thing is, she became. In the past, like 2 years before she died, she became a person that was always doing coke at gigs
Yeah.
and was pissed on stage. And
She
stuff.
just burned like a match. She did. She became really popular and well liked, and then instantly
Yeah.
came back down, and then she died. It was a very interesting career. How long did her career even last? Like 10 years, less than that.
Yeah, no, a lot less than that, I imagine. 2000. Oh, 93 to 11. So.
Yeah, but again, with even though she's not a stand-up comedian, like the first
Yeah,
however
but
many
you know,
years.
that's 93. She was only like very young. That wasn't exactly her career.
Yeah, and she wouldn't have been known at all for the first like half of her career.
She was 10 when she was 93, so that doesn't really count.
What was she doing then? Didn't she have a famous dad?
He's famous for something, but I don't know if he's famous for being her dad. Her first album was released in 2003, so you know, 03 to 11.
Yeah. Oh no, her dad is a taxi driver actually. It's completely wrong there.
It's just a bit sad. And there's tons of those stories with like comedians. Mitch Hedberg's a perfect example.
Yeah.
He died of a heroin overdose, didn't he?
Kinnison as well, didn't he die of an overdose?
Drug overdose. No, he got hit by a truck.
Yeah, but that didn't kill him though, did he? That was like.
No, he got hit by a drunk driver again.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he just got sober apparently.
Yeah.
Was like off the drugs, and he was driving, and two drunk drivers, like young tiny drunk drivers, smashed him.
Oh, I didn't know that. I've heard that he got hit by a truck when he was younger, and after he got hit by a truck, he turned into like the shouty guy that everyone knows. Before that, he was like really
Yeah.
timid and nice, which is a weird thing to think about.
37 years old Hedberg was.
Sam Kinison, 38.
Sam
Let's see his
Kinison looked
death.
a lot older though, because he was that big fat guy.
Yeah.
He was a big cokehead, Sam Kinison.
Yeah.
Mark
Struck
Maron
by
always
drunk
talks
drivers.
about it on his podcast. 'Cause
Yeah.
they used to
I've
hang
stopped
out
listening to
together.
Mark Maron's podcast.
For any reason?
No, not at all. It's just that I have other things to listen to. I just have too many podcasts to listen to. I think I can't remember what podcast it was, but I think I was listening to Joe Rogan or something, and he had a guest on that was giving Mark Maron shit for always name dropping Sam Kinison.
Really?
Yeah,
That's interesting.
I think a lot of comedians give Mark Maron shit because he used to be very. Mark Maron is very sort of. He's got a lot of problems, and he talks about them. He used to talk about them a lot in his act, and a lot of
Yeah.
people didn't like that. But I think he's a bit older now, and he's a bit more sort of.
I like Mark Maron. I think
Yeah, I
he's a
like
funny
him as well.
guy.
Yeah.
I think his podcast's very good. I've only seen a couple of his stand up, but they're very interesting. He is very sort of I don't know, alternative I suppose. You either like him or you don't like him.
Yeah.
A lot of people really dislike him.
Yeah, a lot of people dislike. I mean, that's the same for like any. I don't think there are any really good stand-ups that everyone likes. Like it's one of those very polarizing things. Like if you take a stand-up that a lot of people really love, you can guarantee that a lot of people absolutely hate them as well. Like any of these Sam Kinison, like you can guarantee there are a lot of people who should hate him.
I always think with a lot of comedians there are people who just don't understand their act as well.
Yeah.
There are people who just don't understand what the message is other than shouting or screaming or jokes about dicks or.
And there are some people who don't, like, you have to sort of understand the nature of stand-up comedy a little bit to appreciate some comics. Like, there are some comics whose whole act is an act, and people don't understand. People just still think that it's like a guy on stage talking. Like, a lot of people don't even realise that stand-up, like, specials are like written things that people have premeditated. Like, a lot of people think, especially younger people, I suppose,
Just turn up and do it.
yeah, that it's like all ad-libbed. I think that disillusions some people when they see someone perform the same set twice.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my god,
Just doing the same joke.
this isn't real.
I think the lines are a bit blurred as well now because there's a. And it's not so much with stand-up, but a lot with these Louis Maron-esque programs where you play sort of yourself, and people don't know the difference between you as a person and you as a comedian, sort of joking about yourself, but on a different level, exaggerating it slightly. I know people accuse Louis C.K. of that a lot because he does a lot of jokes about, being a fat white guy and jokes about his kids and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's quite obviously just exaggerated humour. But people just think it's him just talking. And it's,
Louis C.K. is one of those people who I think is a good actor, and that shows on his stage shows. He'll just say something and then sort of laugh at himself.
Yeah.
And then if you see that same special twice, he'll laugh at himself at the exact same point.
Yeah.
People think, oh, you weren't really laughing at yourself. That was like a premeditated
it's
thing.
Performance art, isn't it?
Yeah. But it's like you've got to sort of accept that that's just what stand-up comedy is.
Yeah, it's all just a performance. It's all just a show.
Yeah. And some people don't realise that, and it annoys some people, I suppose. But I suppose there are a lot of comics who do ad-lib and do improvise on stage. It's just a risk, I suppose. That's probably the main reason people don't do it.
I imagine people don't do it for big gigs, but if you go and see somebody in a tiny comedy club just working on their new hour, they'll just try a joke and a joke will spring out here and they'll ad-lib and think this. And
I think the whole process is very demystified these days because a lot of stand-up comics have podcasts, blogs, Twitter accounts where they talk about the process and stuff like that. Like, if we were talking about this like 10 years ago,
people wouldn't know.
Yeah, it'd be much less common knowledge that comics go around clubs working on their hour, say. And now it's like, obviously we sort of know that that's what they do because we listen to like comic podcasts.
Well, that's this is one of our points, like how the 21st century has affected stand-up and how it will affect it in the future. And it's changed things massively if you think about it. There are so many acts. I know Doug Stanhope, he has he might be Finnish or Icelandic or something, guy open for him.
Oh, right.
He just found online and was hilarious and just booked him to. Like, you'd never be able to come across these people 10, 20 years ago. And it's so much easier now to get bookings, I'd imagine, because you just say, look, here's half an hour of me on YouTube. Send it to a club owner and say,
look at my Twitter account. Those are my jokes.
Yeah, there's so much more. So it's so much easier to promote yourself. Whereas you're not just ringing up and travelling the road and hoping that you could get a set here. I don't know, but then, like you say, it's demystified a bit. It's not the same.
I think that's probably going to lead to a lot more comedians in the future because a lot of people are sort of our age listen to these podcasts and getting a feel for the method and sort of method. That's a very acty term. I don't mean method. I mean the sort of process and sort of thinking, I want to do that, and then going into it with a bit more knowledge of how it works. Yeah. And a lot less false assumptions and stuff like that.
But like you say, everyone thinks they can be a comedian.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier to be a comedian now. We could just throw the webcam on, just do 5 minutes jokes, post it on YouTube. It's not a real stand-up set, but it's you just joking, and you can put it out there, and you can tweet jokes and pretend you can be anything.
Well, the whole vlog thing is a whole new medium, and people don't really use it for comedy very much, but all the people who do use it for comedy aren't very good comedians, really. But it's like a new way of doing it, where you're just sort of talking to a camera just by yourself, and there's no crowd or anything. I suppose a crowd is sort of I don't know. I mean, people would say that it's a vital part of stand-up comedy because it's like a barometer for how good you're doing. But then, boundaries are meant to be pushed and rules are meant to be broken, and
Well, that's
maybe
the
that
thing.
will change in the future. Who knows?
You still have an audience. It's just not live and in person.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did someone say hole in the market? Get on this. What are we doing?
Oh.
Why are we doing this out of date podcast?
Yeah,
malarkey?
yeah. What I'll do, I'll go on Ustream, turn the webcam on.
And we'll just do gags.
We'll just do gags, yeah. At the minute, it's just like a drawing of us live.
Not doing gags.
The date is on there, that's not funny. There's no joke there. It says episode 6, stand-up comedy, that's not funny. Tweet is at TFC Park, where's the gag there? That's not
No
even
gag.
a joke.
Not a gag.
What are we doing? What are we doing with our lives?
Sitting in Studio B over here at TFC Towers in TFC Town,
TFC Town in the
hitting
Palladium.
up the ladies.
Yeah.
The ladies. But this, yeah, going back to the 21st century, there's so many more comedians that I'm now aware of because of like the internet and podcasts and
Yeah.
YouTube and all of these things.
Yeah.
If you look at the podcasts I listen to, Irish Affair Skeptic, I don't think he's ever performed in England. He might have done, but I've
Might have
never
done.
I've never heard him or seen him. Joey Diaz, probably not allowed in England.
Yeah, I don't think it's...
So I'll never get to see him.
Yeah. These are all like Death Squad people.
Yeah.
Like people
Which all
Joe
stems,
Rogan brought
all
to
stems
life.
from Joe Rogan,
Yeah.
who I didn't even know was stand-up for a long time. I knew him as the guy who commentated on the UFC.
Yeah.
I suppose when I was young, didn't really have internet, when podcasts didn't exist.
I watched one of his stand-ups when it first came out a few years ago, and it was like a special, but it was in a sort of small club, and it was I remember he did a joke about 3 magic words that you can't say. One of them is fuck, one of them is love, and one of them is cunt. And
Yeah.
these are words that you can't say, or no, they're not words that you can't say, but they're words that have a big impact. I can't really remember; it was a long time ago, but they're words that have a massive impact, especially for women. He was saying. And I like found him hilarious and thought it was really funny. And then I was like googling him, and I found that he had a podcast, and listened to there were only like 2 or 3 episodes, and I listened to it, and I was like, what is this? Because it was him and like Brian
Getting
Redban.
stoned.
And I was like, who are these people? I don't know who these people are. This is obviously part of something that I don't know about, and I just
Yeah.
put it aside. And several years later, it's like really good, and it's really fun to listen to. I suppose with podcasts, one of the barriers to entry is that when you first listen to a podcast, especially if it's a few episodes in, you sort of don't know the people, you don't know what their thing is, and that scares a lot of people off. I don't know why I'm talking about that. I should have talked about that in episode 1, podcasting.
That's fine, don't worry about it, P.
But yeah,
Just throw it all out. It's good to get it out.
better out than him.
Yeah. I'm so much more aware of comedians now. And I can Google and YouTube, and even if I wanted to buy DVDs of,
Slow down.
slow down, I'm probably not going to do that.
No.
But
Have you heard of Pirate Bay?
of so many more comedians
Yeah.
that I would ever get to see here. If I was relying on the newspaper or television adverts, the
Yeah.
only person I'd ever see would be like Lee Evans at Birmingham,
Yeah.
Grimsby, Birmingham or Grimsby, the 2 biggest venues in the United States of Kingdom.
Yeah, if there was no such thing as the internet, then the only comedians I would be aware of would be like Lee Evans and, like you say, like the really popular
Really
ones.
massively
And
popular.
I wouldn't realise really that there's anything other than that.
I
It'd be
suppose
very
that's
weird.
why you have to get involved in comedy clubs to know of comedians.
Yeah.
Or then you get people like when Lenny Bruce first came out and was being arrested at shows. I imagine that'll get mainstream attention.
Didn't he get arrested for like swearing and stuff?
Yeah,
It's
obscenity. Talk
That's
about
insane.
drugs and stuff. There's an LP of his. I don't know if it's called an LP. You know, a
Like a
vinyl
record, yeah.
where it keeps on him being arrested. Like the police come and like
Oh,
shut him
really?
down, get him off. It's really interesting to listen to. But of course, you listen to it now,
Yeah.
and all he's saying is like piss and shit and
Yeah.
maybe fuck or something. And it's like, what are you? This is
It's
nothing.
again like we were saying earlier. It's
But
like,
again, a guy who died of heroin overdose when he
Yeah.
was about 40 or something.
it's like very much a product of its time, his comedy. Like there are a lot of comedians from his era or a little bit later than his era where it doesn't really resonate with me in any way.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And it's like, it is sort of funny, but I
Jokes,
hesitate to say, oh, that's not funny, because it's just not my area.
jokes that are jokes, if you know what I mean,
Yeah.
are always funny. But Lenny Bruce's famed for pushing boundaries that no longer exist.
Yeah.
So we don't.
It's not really significant
He
anymore.
he was significant at a time when boundaries needed to be broken for Carlins and everyone who came after him to come in and do it.
Yeah.
But now we're just like
Yeah.
not really sure what's going on here.
What are the boundaries now, do you think? What are the boundaries that need pushing these days in stand-up comedy?
I don't know if there are
I mean, there'd no longer be taboos and things to do with like being offended.
Yeah.
Like the sort of offensive, like we were saying earlier, like Frankie Boyle does all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's no longer really impressive because you're allowed to do it and no one's got a problem with you doing it. And you're like on BBC One doing it. And like,
nobody's going to come and arrest you.
Yeah. It's not like a big clever thing to do anymore because you're not breaking barriers, you're not being brave in any way.
Well, if anything, you're being the opposite.
Yeah. Sort of doing what you know works.
Picking on vulnerable people. And that's the joke. Well, not the joke. That's the argument about that kind of comedy. Is that if it's done in a way that it's basically just laughing at inferior people, then it's just not all right. Whereas if it's done joking with them, I suppose, sort of including, saying you're not so freakish that I'm not going to include you in comedy, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But then if you're just laughing at people, you're like you're a mong, you're a spaz, then it's not comedy. That's just picking on people.
Yeah. There is
bullying.
A weird sort of blurry line there between being inclusive, like I'm not above picking on you, and just picking on people because you think you're better than them. Yeah.
And it is a very tricky line to get right, and people, especially people like Frankie, will get it wrong a lot. But I suppose you have to. Do you have to? I don't know.
Well,
I don't think you really have to.
I don't know. There's been a lot of things recently about rape and stuff like that, in like rape jokes.
Yeah.
In stand-up comedy, and people are talking about like, you have to be allowed to say anything in stand-up comedy, and that's true. But I think I'm almost more offended by comedy that's just not funny.
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to push a boundary, you better be funny about it. Otherwise, you just you taking a political stance that I don't care about, and you're doing it on my watch sort of thing, and it's just bothersome to watch someone shout the word rape and that's right, I said it, and it's like, I don't care if you said it, it's not funny, so stop doing it.
I think as well, growing up in not the era, but the sort of generation that we have, I've been swearing or been around people who are swearing and saying just obscenely ridiculous things from a really early age. On playground, people swear because they don't get to do it at home, so you're just throwing things out you don't really understand, you're making horrendous jokes, calling people niggers and just getting all your sort of racism and sexual stuff, just all the weird stuff out. I don't know why you do it, but everyone sort of does do it to a certain extent. And so to then go and watch, Malcolm McIntyre's Comedy Roadshow and have Rod Gilbert going, "Oh, motherfucker," I'm like, "Oh, I don't."
That's what I've been saying since I was 6. So it's not
it doesn't have the impact that you think it does.
Yeah. I don't think swearing and stuff like that is as big a thing anymore. Taboos in general, I don't think that's where. I think that at one point, that's where the boundaries needed pushing in stand-up comedy. People needed to break the barriers of taboos. That's why. But now those barriers have been broken. And I don't think
did that 7 dirty words you can't say on TV.
And I don't think that's the place anymore that people need to be pushing the boundaries. I'm not sure where boundaries need pushing, but it's no longer to do with like swearing or sex or violence or racism or anything like that. Taboos in general.
I don't know what. I think there's a lack of mainstream political comedy.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I don't know if that's true. I think a lot of the mainstream comedy is very pop politics. Like, oh, those Tories. Oh.
Yeah, but that's not. That's just saying something to get a clap.
Yeah.
Because everyone reads headlines of papers that go, "Oh, we're cutting benefits." And And so to have someone go, "Oh, what are they doing?" You go, "Whoa."
I think that's a huge thing in mainstream comedy. It's to just dig on the headlines and just say,
But then there's very few people who are very in depth. I don't know. But then that's a very niche audience.
Yeah. There is that whole sort of
alternatives do it. There's Mark Thomas does it. He's quite a famous political comedian. Who's very funny, but you don't see him very often on television. It's quite big in the 90s, I think.
Who is he? Mark Thomas?
Mark Thomas.
I'm not sure if I know who he is.
He had a show as well called like Mark Thomas's Political Adventure or something. You'd know him if you saw him, I think.
I'm gonna Google him.
Also, Lenny Bruce, October 4th, 1961, was arrested for obscenity. He had used the word cocksucker.
Yeah, again, that's not like back then. I'm sure it was very important to say cocksucker and to have that be something that you can say.
In 1961, he was arrested for drug possession and for obscenity because he'd used the word schmuck, an insulting Yiddish term that was an obscene term for penis.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays, I mean, we're on the internet, and the only thing you can't do on the internet really is child porn,
Yeah.
and that's not a boundary that anyone wants to push.
Nobody's going, yeah.
Yeah. So
Can we just get more of that on, please? So who's going to be the first one?
yeah.
You show me some kiddie fucking.
So that's not really like the boundary isn't there anymore. So you don't really need to experiment with that anymore. I don't know. It's very interesting because I'm sure in like 20 years' time we'll be able to look back and say, oh, 2013, that was the year X boundary was broken.
Yeah.
But I wonder what it is. I mean, women in comedy is a huge thing. That there are a lot of people who still think that women can't be comedians, and that argument is given a lot of credence by notable, intelligent people. So that's one of those things that's still.
I'm not sure why that is.
Why people say it, or
yeah, why people say it. Why it's.
I thought you were of the opinion that women comedians weren't funny.
I'm not of the opinion that all women comedians aren't funny. I'm saying for a lot of women comedians, stand-up wise, aren't very funny, because they're reliant on being something different. Because it's a very male-orientated world, which is, not their fault. So when they get the chance, they're trying to appeal to women.
It's like, this is the niche we are, sort of thing.
Yeah, so they're not trying to appeal to all comedy fans and saying, look, here's some jokes to prove that women, we're just making the same jokes as men and it's fine. They're taking the easy road. I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them taking the easy road and just doing, like, women-based material.
Yeah.
Well, men do a lot of men-based material and it's not fair, etc., etc. But they're taking the sort of easy road and just being like, oh, well, being a woman. And
that's one of those things I really dislike. And whenever like ethnic minorities do comedy,
it's like,
and they sort of say, well, my mother's always saying, oh, you better get a husband, and it's like, well, that's not funny. You stop doing that. It's not funny. It's like, I understand that you're like Iranian or whatever you are, and that's like what's that comedian's name who sort of makes fun of that?
Shavi.
No,
Chris Bandy.
That's not what I'm thinking.
That's not a real name.
The sort of fattish guy.
Omid Jalili.
Yeah. He sort of makes fun of that whole thing.
Yeah.
Where he pretends to have a very thick Iranian accent. And he's doing that whole like, oh, my mother always says.
Yeah.
And it's like.
Whereas his actual normal comedy is very funny.
Yeah, because he's just a guy from London, just being a funny guy.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of women who are just very funny people, who are being funny people, who aren't relying on the fact that they're women.
Well, that's why you get a lot of, if you look at someone like French and Saunders,
yeah,
who are a really funny comedy like duo, comedy act.
Yeah.
Their program's been very successful. Victoria Wood, very successful British wise.
Yeah.
If you look at in America, you got Lily Tomlin and Carol Burnett and Joan Rivers, who's more stand-up than any of the others.
Yeah.
But they've just been funny and had their own shows and been writers. And you get it a lot now with someone like Sarah Silverman or Margaret Cho or all these kind of people. Amy Schumer, who are more writers than stand-ups, but are doing stand-up and doing just everyday jokes rather than women-only jokes. And it's funny.
I don't know what it is. I mean, a lot of people say, though, that women can't be funny on some sort of philosophical level. Like, they inherently aren't as funny as men. And people talk about it as if it's like a scientific fact. Like,
their brains are much smaller than ours.
Well, not that necessarily, but Christopher Hitchens was very famous for saying it. And he's, like, famous for being an incredibly intelligent person. Like, he's one of those very sort of atheist people. Like, my
dead now, though, isn't he?
Laptop smells because it's so hot. It smells like hot dust coming from my laptop. Yeah, he's dead now, but he was always talking about female comedians. He was saying, like, female comedians can't be funny because, evolutionarily speaking, males are funny because that's the way that males interact, and women don't do that. Women are just
not having banter.
Yeah, and it's like, that's not true, because there are a lot of female comedians who are funny, and you can't just discount that and say, well, that's an anomaly. We'll ignore that because that's like what's happening.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who he used as an example. I think he used Tina Fey as an example, and said like she's not funny and stuff like that. But it's at that point, are you sort of not forgetting that that's your opinion, and you can't just push that and say this is fact? It's like we were talking last episode about Roger Ebert talking about games, like a very respected, well liked, intelligent person pushing their opinion as if it were fact, and it's like you've lost sight of the fact that this is a subjective thing, and you can't just say this is a fact when it's your opinion, really.
I think it doesn't help that for a long period of time there were very, very few women in stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
If you look back to like Bruce Carlin, that sort of 60s, 70s,
Yeah.
the only people that were about were like Lily Tomlin and Carol Burnett, and they weren't really stand-up comedians. They were just women doing jokes or comparing or. And so.
Well, it's probably partially because
you're
people
so
wouldn't
many
tolerate it.
years behind now.
Yeah. But is that women's fault, or is that...
No, so that's not women's fault, but I'm saying that because they haven't had the experience of doing so, you can't just suddenly expect the best male comedians who have had influences and acts and been watching...
Standing on the shoulders of giants from, like...
Yeah.
Decades and decades of material.
Well, if you look at the best comedians today, if you look at someone like a Stuart Lee, all the people that have influenced him have been from the past and been successful, been influenced by other people, and pretty much all male because there were no females there. If you look at all the modern day females, they haven't got as much female talent and depth
to work on. Yeah, it's very true. Yeah.
So you can't expect them to be as hilarious.
Yeah.
Unless they then look at like male comedy and then they're just going to do normal comedy, and then it doesn't really make a difference because anyone can tell a joke.
I think there's got to be like there has to be a woman doing stand up who's like blows everyone's cocks off and is like really phenomenal and headlines and gets incredibly famous and just everyone likes them. Like there has to be like a Bill Hicks or a George Carlin or whatever.
Yeah, before that.
Who's female, just to sort of open the door for other women to sort of say, oh, okay, I can do that as well.
There's nobody like that at the minute.
Yeah.
I can't think of any. The biggest female comedian I can think of probably at the minute is like Sarah Silverman.
Yeah, definitely.
And she's not. She is quite funny, but she's not anything like.
Her stand up isn't like her main thing, so it's not really. Well, I suppose it might be, but she really shines in like sketch comedy and writing and stuff like that. So it's
But I think the argument that women aren't funny is just sort of gone.
I don't know if it has. I mean, I suppose it's died down a lot.
Because there are so many...
The fact that so many reputable, intelligent people like Christopher Hitchens, for example, again, talking about it in the past like 5 years, it just lends credence to this really outdated, stupid idea that like women can't be funny, and that barrier has to be broken down at some point.
I think there's so many comedians, like especially women comedians and writers, that are so like Tina Fey, for example. I don't know if she does any stand up at all, but is sort of renowned as being like just one of the best writers in the world at the minute. Comedian, like she did 30 Rock, which is loved by pretty much everybody. Mean Girls, pretty much loved by anybody.
Which is a sequel for coming out, Mean Mums. Look for it in cinemas. I don't know if she's working on that.
Are we in it?
I'm in it, yeah. I'm one of the mums. You can be in it if you want.
Can I? Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love that.
You can play Lohan.
Yeah, because she's in a bit of trouble.
She's in a tiff. She's gone into hiding apparently. So, according to the last episode of Bedside that I listened to.
Oh, that sounds good.
Which was great. It was a blinder. PB&J, top form.
They're always on top form, those lads. Hashtag lads. Hashtag comedian lads.
What were we talking about?
Women comedians.
Women comedians. What else could be said about women comedians? It's one of those things that it's a shame that it's even a talking point. Yeah. Like, I mean, that you can't ignore the fact that there are differences in gender.
Well, there's differences in the way genders communicate. That's just a natural.
But it's the same for anyone. It's like saying someone from a certain country can't be a comedian. Like if you look at a UK comedian and an American comedian, like those are the only two countries that I can name comedians from, really.
I watched some Indian stand-up comedy on one of the Indian channels on Sky the other day. It was all in Hindi. So I had absolutely no idea what was going on. But the intros were all in English. So
Oh,
it would
really?
go off for a break and then
That's
be
very
like,
strange.
welcome back. Oh, I don't want to do the accent. I won't do the accent. Welcome back to, I don't know what, I can't remember what it was called. It was like some of the, showcasing some of the best Indian stand-up talent out there. And they would cut to him and they'd be like, in a suit, just be like, blah, 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 blah. And everyone would be like, ha, ha, ha.
It's stand-up an American thing, it is, isn't it? Like, it originated in America, I think.
Yeah.
So I suppose it takes a while to get to other countries.
If you look at sort of history of stand-up, it would come from a lot of like one-man shows, a lot of like Bob Hope.
Yeah.
And people like that who go out and do troupe shows and do like, not vaudeville, but sort of pantomime and variety acts that would just come out and do funny stuff. And that became people just telling stories, and that became people telling jokes.
It comes from, a lot of it comes from people just comparing and just sort of being there to introduce the next act.
Introduce it.
Like
well, that's how it came from, like those sort of variety acts of the 1800s. I suppose.
No idea. I suppose so. Yeah.
Late 19th century. Yeah, vaudeville, minstrels.
Yeah. I mean, in Britain, the history of stand-up, I think, is quite dire. Like, there aren't a lot of great stand-ups from back in. It's all like people just doing Blackpool and just saying, just really sort of shit. I don't want to bring up the north-south divide, but because we're right bang in the middle, so we can talk shit about both. But like a lot of the sort of northern comedians of like back in the day, like Peter Kay is like a throwback. Like he does that sort of comedy where it's like
just sort of
working
class comedy.
Yeah, where it's like talking about his family in a very sort of wacky sort of way, but very down to earth.
Stand-up comedy before the sort of working men's clubs revivals of the sort of 70s was pretty much dead. You had your Bruce Forsyths and your Max Millers and your all those that came from what's it called, variety acts, and they would play the like London Palladium, and you'd have Morecambe and Wise who do like big Palladium shows. But they weren't stand-ups as such; they were acts that would do a bit of dancing, a bit of singing, a few jokes, and that just sort of died out when television came about. Really,
I suppose Morecambe and Wise sort of clung on.
You had Morecambe and Wise, and you had people like Tommy Cooper. Yeah, but they were more performances. It wasn't jokes. Like Tommy Cooper's entire thing was, I'm doing magic, doing a bit of bad magic, and it's not like that. And
I thank you.
Yeah, I thank you.
But it was very sort of like you say, it wasn't just comedy.
It's
it was
not
like
a man just standing
be entertained by this people.
Yeah. So no, Morecambe and Wise, we're doing a dance. We've got a guest. I'm playing all the right notes, but not necessarily in the right order. Yeah. But then
maybe we'll go back to that eventually. Maybe the future of comedy lies in, because like there are a lot of sort of musical comedians. Like Stephen Lynch was a huge one. David O'Doherty is one in the UK.
Yeah, he's very funny. I like him.
He's very funny, and he does his keyboard. And there are a lot of people who bring props into the acts and stuff like that.
Well, Tim Minchin's the guy who's like the most famous for that. Big
musical
theatrical sort of look at it. But that's because he comes from a very sort of theatrical background.
Yeah. Like I don't know if you know who Bo Burnham is, but he was very big on YouTube, and then that's how he launched his career, by doing like songs, like comedy songs. He was inspired by people like Stephen Lynch and like musical comedians, and then now he's like, doing stand-up comedy, and he still does his music in it. And I wonder if the future is going to go back to the sort of variety element where people are sort of singing and dancing.
Well, you get a lot of comedians, possibly Britain's most famous or like most loved comedian, Billy Connolly. He started off doing like folk songs because he worked at like docks and would do like folk songs, and then sort of threw the guitar to one side. Just like, fuck, look at my trousers, look at my beard.
I read
Jasper Carrot was a bit of a musician as well.
I read Billy Connolly's one of his I don't know if he's got more than one, but his biography when I was like 11 or something, and there was like a passage in it about lying on your arm to make it go numb so that you can have a wank. And I tried it for like a week and I couldn't nail it because I was too lazy. I laid on it for like a second and I was like, no, fuck it, I can't be bothered.
But
it's a very vivid memory.
The working men's club sort of circuit in the 70s was a real sort of hot spot and a hot period for British comedy, but you don't talk about it anymore because it was a very working class, very sexist, racist, homophobic period. Not all of it was like that. Not every joke was,
But that was more sort of the norm, though. I suppose.
But that was what the working men's clubs were like. That's why it's so successful.
What people wanted.
Bernard Manning, he had a huge club in like wherever he was from. Roy Chubby Brown still sells out Blackpool Pier like every year.
He's a comedian I really dislike. Because he's just like, oh, the net wank.
Literally that.
Yeah.
And then shoved it up a clip.
Yeah.
He's about 70. It's
Yeah.
like, stop doing this.
Sitting on a cock and I had a wank in my own mouth. Doodle.
Burn up.
Yeah. Banana. It's like, it's not.
Banana.
Yeah. Like, I'm sure that was hilarious back in the day. I remember being like 8 or 9 and listening to that and being like, this is hilarious. But when you're like 70, it's just sad.
Well,
It's not really funny. It's just, I mean, maybe he loves it and like is his passion. I don't really know, but
you have to adapt. I was listening, like, I don't want to come back to podcasts all the time, but the Joe Rogan with Dom Herrera,
yeah,
who I found out Dom Herrera is about 68 or something,
Yeah.
really old and still touring. And one of the big things he was saying is you have to adapt and change your act.
Yeah, for the time.
And you can have the same style, you can have, your deadpan style or your erratic style, but times change, society change, and you have to change with it. And so people like Bernard Manning and Boardman and Carson, Chubby Brown, and all these people who were like, it's the way I tell them, and niggers and brown face and all this stuff that then people in like the 1990s were like, how can you be doing
Yeah,
this?
it's
How
like
can we do
society
this?
has moved on.
Society moves on, and if you want to stay successful, you have to move on with it, or like Roy Chubby Brown does, and like Bernard Manning did
become
until
like
he
a
died,
throwback niche
become a throwback
for the old people.
And for the old people and the very, very working class who'll come out and see it anyway, but then just be sort of ostracised by the rest of the sort of country.
It's like no one takes you seriously if you do that.
No. And then your entire act is that you're a throwback and that you're very working class, and you have to then fulfill that and have to make these jokes and have to... If Roy Chubby Brown comes out next year and goes, don't call me Chubby Brown anymore, it's going to be called Roy Brown.
Yeah, Roy Brown.
Roy Brown. All this gone, that's gone.
Yeah.
I'm just going to wear a nice suit.
He just gets onto the stage, lights a cigarette, stands and smokes for a minute, and then goes, so those Tories.
Yeah, if you did that, Dave Allen who sat down. If you just did that, everyone would be like, what? No one would come and see him because his audience, he would have ostracised his own audience, and everyone else has already been ostracised. So he's backed himself into a corner, and all these comedians have, where you have to then live up to your audience, or face years out while you try and rebuild an audience. Which I don't know how old Roy Chubby Brown is, but I don't think he has. He's probably in his 60s.
Do you think? I think 70s.
No, he's only in his 60s, I think. 68.
68.
45.
He's such a weird guy, Roy Chubby Brown. Like his whole thing is so, because it's from like such a long time ago, it sort of sticks out as being very surreal and weird. Like it was very normal back in the day, but now it's not at all. Jim Davidson, he's another one who's very racist and like sexist and stuff, and it's like, well, you're appealing to a crowd of people that like you have to sort of ask yourself whether you really want to appeal to these people.
Jim Davidson is weird. I didn't know for a long time that he was a sort of very strange racist comedian.
Yeah.
Because in my life,
snooker.
In my life, he was the presenter of the Generation Game and Pot Black.
Yeah.
Or Pot Break, whatever it's called.
Here's a picture of him when he was like.
Yeah, because he was a good comedian, wasn't he? He won something. It might have been like Opportunity Knocks or something. And he was sort of quite successful and was funny. And people liked him for a long time, but
he's just one of those people who just didn't move on with society. And he just became the sort of racist old man.
But then he did things for a long time. He did those weird, like adult pantomimes, which was strange.
I think with him, people like him and like Chubby Brown and all those people, they are alternative, but in a very weird way, because they're not the sort of alternative that like teenage and 20-year-old people go to, like hipsters, I suppose is the word, go to for like, oh yeah, these are my alternative people, these are the people I love. They're more sort of alternative because their style has died out. So it's a weird phenomenon where they are a part of the alternative they are alternative, but they're not a part of that scene of alternative people. They're just sort of on the wrong side of alternative. They're on the wrong side of mainstream, like the wrong side of the tracks in general.
There's no sort of desire to.
Like no one aims for that. No one wants to be that guy who's just.
I suppose in Britain as well, comedy sprung up a lot out of university. Out of like footlights and in Cambridge. And that was sort of like 70s and 80s, and now like continuing on to this day.
Yeah, people now like.
There's a wave of comedians that came from like footlights, from your Hugh Dennis's and people like that, and
Richard Ayoade
and then to the modern day sort of your Ayoades and your other people. There's so many famous people that have started off at university, which I don't think
I'm gonna search footlights
50 years ago would have been the case.
Yeah, I think as stand-up becomes more sort of respected as an art form, I suppose it'll be more and more common for people to come out of that sort of as like an academic pursuit sort of thing.
There's so many people here on this list that have gone on to do really good things. Alexander Armstrong, for instance, Ayoade, David Baddiel, Peter Bennett Jones, Tim Brooke Taylor, who was in the Goodies, John Cleese, Graham Chapman, Olivia Colman, Hugh Dennis, Julian Fellows.
Yeah, there are a lot of people.
John Finnemore, David Frost,
David Mitchell,
Stephen Fry, Mel Giodrick. Jermaine Greer is old as shit.
How old is he?
She is 33 years old.
I don't know who it is.
Jermaine Greer, you'd know if you saw her face.
How do you spell it?
Jermaine
Greer.
Yeah. But you know, so many people. And that's a big thing now. A lot of people go to start that way. John Oliver, currently presenting The Daily Show.
John Oliver's got... I've never seen... I don't know if he does stand-up.
I've never seen any of his stand-up, but his podcast's really funny. He's very funny.
Andy Zaltzman's stand-up is very funny as well.
Yeah, Andy Zaltzman. He's a very sort of alternative comedian at the minute. Like, you never see him doing comedy, like on television.
Didn't he do quite well at Edinburgh?
Yeah, he's one of these people I think that does a lot of like fringe.
He's one of the comedians. Like, there are a lot of people out there, a lot of comics out there who
live for doing that kind of thing.
Like people who are really into like comedy will really like them, but most people won't, because it's like there's a certain barrier to entry, I suppose. Like you have to sort of know something of the medium to appreciate them.
Nothing wrong with that though.
No, it's fine. But it's just he's an example of one of those sorts of people. All those alternative people, I think that's part of it, is that they're alternative because they really enjoy the craft and really appreciate the craft, and so only people who also appreciate the craft can really appreciate them. Yeah. And that's not, I'm not saying that in a pretentious sort of way, but I'm just saying like you have to invest something to appreciate some of these comedians, and a lot of people, rightly so, don't have the time to do that and don't have the inclination to do that. So it's fair enough, but
yeah, definitely.
I'm gonna have a drink of water.
Yeah, have a little drink of your water.
Oh, what else have we got to talk about?
What about different forms of delivery?
Like shouty delivery, deadpan. Again, it's one of those things where I suppose it comes from it's like there are certain known ways. Do you want to chew gum?
Yeah, go on.
There are certain known ways of delivering comedy, like there's shouty, deadpan. And I suppose back in the day, whenever that day was, these weren't terms that were used, and these weren't categories of delivery. So the people who started doing them did them because that's how they performed, and that's like maybe it was a risk back in the day. Well, it certainly was a risk at some point to do deadpan. Yeah. And to do very violent, shouty, loud stuff. But now, if you want to become a comedian, that's one of the routes you can take. That's like one of the options.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't think these phrases, like deadpan, it existed, deadpan delivery, but it wasn't a form of
It wasn't like
stand-up
a
comedy
style to-
until somebody did. Same with the sort of erratic, madcappy sort of, like Robin Williams is very famous for being very
Yeah.
energetic. Like we were saying, Lee Evans is now.
Mm.
You didn't have that then. But I don't know. If you do it well, I think any style is really good to look at.
Yeah.
Not to look at, but to watch.
Yeah.
But if you do it badly, I always think a lot of people rely on a sort of gimmick
Yeah.
if their material isn't very strong. So you run around or you shout a lot and you say,
Yeah.
fucking can. But there's what's the guy? Is it Nick Helm?
Yeah.
The guy who's very angry and shouty now. And he's quite funny. I quite enjoy him.
Yeah, he's alright.
Brendan Burns, like I was saying, off air.
Yeah.
I saw him the other week.
Was that off air again? I can't remember.
Let's say yes.
Yeah.
If it wasn't, send us a tweet.
Congratulations.
I saw him. He was very confrontational, this shouty style.
Yeah. The style of like giving your audience shit.
Yeah.
I suppose all these styles are sort of extensions of ways of communicating, because that's what stand-up is really. It's like a sort of broad form of communicating with people, and it's a practiced and deliberate form of just communication. So I suppose any way that you can talk to someone, if you just exaggerate that, then it's it can be a style of delivery, like condescending, you know.
Yeah.
Confused, like any way that you can talk to someone, you can turn that into a way of performing. And I suppose some of them are more some of them fit comedy more than others, but I don't know. I wonder what's the normal way of performing comedy. I don't really know. I suppose it's just sort of I don't know, what's the most common thing? Like observational, I suppose.
Observational, just sort of humour.
It's not really a style of delivery, but
In Britain, you have a lot of sort of satire, sarcasm, maybe.
yeah.
Because we're sort of known for our sarcasm, Britain.
Yeah. Well, I think Britain is known for being really good at comedy, mostly because of like Monty Python and stuff like that. But when you look at our stand-up comedy, I don't really think it's generally very good. Like there are a few stand-up comics in Britain who are really good, but generally, especially historically, like we were talking about older comedians, like it's not really on the same level as American comedy. And Americans are always saying like, "Oh, Britain is the mecca of comedy. It's like so good for comedy," but really it's not. It's just those few people, like especially Monty Python. People always point to Monty Python as like one of the
Founding
shining
fathers.
beacons of comedy, and it's like they were British, but there are so many other Americans who are just a lot better at it.
Well, I suppose they're pointing up to for a while in the sort of 70s, 80s, 90s. There was a lot of comedy. There was a lot of comedy shows. There were a lot of places to perform.
Yeah.
But I don't think there were many standout soul stand-up comedians. There were a lot of very, very funny writers, a lot of very funny shows, and there was a lot of comedy happening.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was purely stand-up. There was a lot of people who did stand up to then work on other shows or to write a bit more, but there was nothing. I don't know. There's nothing that was pure stand up like you get now. Like there were comedy like stores and places to perform, but I can't pick out someone who's known only for their stand up from that period.
Yeah.
Maybe
From
apart
Britain.
from Billy Connolly.
Yeah. Yeah. Neither can I. Yeah. And maybe there were people who just weren't good enough to be remembered, but you know, it's a very American thing, and I think they're still probably the best at it.
But then, would that have been the case if it wasn't for the fact that everyone wanted to get into like television and film and media here? Like you come out of Footlights and people are in troops and writing, instead of writing stand-up shows, they're writing sketches for television.
Especially for radio and stage.
Yeah.
Like, that's a huge thing.
And I think, I don't know if it's true, but Britain has a lot of historically hilarious television shows.
Yeah.
That were written by very funny people.
A lot of funny writers from Britain.
Yeah, a lot of funny writers and comic like performers.
Yeah.
But not necessarily stand-ups.
Yeah.
Like I say, Dawn French, Jennifer Saunders, all those. You sort of Rick Mail,
Yeah.
Rowan Atkinson, all those sort of that era of Blackadder and
Yeah.
Young Ones and
Like the 80s sort of.
yeah, 80s.
I think the thing is that where that's all performance and stuff. I know we were saying before about how stand-up comedy at its heart is sort of performance, but the thing about stand-up comedy is that it's got to be very real to be any good, really. Like all the best stand-up comedy that you see is very sort of real. Often it's very sort of brutally real or like brutally true or whatever. And then the sort of mediocre comedy that you see is people who would be better off just performing, like acting or whatever.
Yeah.
Like people like Lee Evans and stuff like that.
And Lee Evans, for as famous as he is for
stand-up,
has done a lot of acting.
Yeah,
and he's done a lot of good
acting.
acting.
He was in Mousetrap, wasn't he?
He's done a lot of very funny, like, roles.
Yeah.
Been in a lot of films.
He used to have quite a good sketch show. Oh, well, I don't know if it was a sketch show, like a sitcom, like a really weird sort of sitcom, where it was him doing like silent comedy. It was like Mr. Bean-esque, and it was quite good. I don't know how popular it got because I watched it quite a while after it aired, but it was all right.
Is it called So What Now?
Maybe, I have no idea. But he like, I can't imagine him going on stage and being very confessional and candid, and that's one of the things that makes a really good stand-up comic is candor. And
well, if you look at someone like Richard Pryor, he's famous for that Sunset on the whatever it's called, which is he did like a couple of years or months maybe after he tried to kill himself.
Yeah.
And how he joked about it, and how he joked about his cocaine use, and how he was joking, but it was very raw and very
it was
real.
like him talking to the audience.
And him just being like, motherfucker, I was messed up, you know. And if that's what you remember, you don't remember people just being like, oh, I was at the airport.
Yeah.
And I was dragging my case along.
What's with terminals?
And they're going,
yeah.
what noise is that? I feel like, oh.
Banging the microphone on my hand, like, like that.
Is this thing on? Yeah.
I think most of the sort of really popular well, not popular, but most of the comedians that people revere are very candid and very confessional, often very self-deprecating, but not always, or at least talk about the world in a very true way. Like we were talking about Bill Hicks and George Carlin, they sort of talk less about themselves and more sort of about the world, about the state of the world, about society and stuff like that, in a very sort of true way that resonates with people because it's true and it's candid and it's like unflinching, you know. And it's not their performance or delivery that does it, it's what they're saying, it's the content of what they're saying. And I think that's sort of what makes a good stand-up comic. It's someone who can be real and who can convey something that you've maybe not thought of before. Something that's maybe thought-provoking in a way, or, you know, that sort of thing.
There are so many comedians that we could just sit and chat about in depth for ages.
Yeah.
There's so many people we haven't mentioned. Like, one of my favourite comedians is like Eddie Izzard, but I've not really discussed him.
Yeah, Eddie Izzard's... The fact that he does shows in French baffles me.
He does shows in like French and German and...
Does he do them in other languages as well?
Yeah, I think maybe even in Russian.
That's insane. That's one of those things that's just on a whole different level that I can't even think about that. It's just crazy. Because senses of humour differ. Like, the sense of humour really comes mostly from the language that you speak. And in a narrower sense from the country you're from. Yeah,
he also speaks German. Does it in German.
I think I'd be much less impressed by someone whose second language is English doing an English set. Like, I've seen comedians before from, like, France doing a set in English, and I just don't think twice about it.
Like Henning Wehn. Have you ever heard of Henning Wehn, the German comedian?
But does he do it in English?
Yeah, he does it in English. He speaks English, like, perfectly fine. He's obviously lived here for a while, but...
It's one of those things where it says a lot about me and about English culture, where I'm very impressed about an English person who can speak another language. Because we very famously are just terrible for refusing to learn other languages and just expecting everyone else to speak English.
Yeah, we're quite an arrogant race of people. But there's so many of these stand-ups that have done other things. There's very few that are famed for just doing stand-up. Is it because stand-up isn't enough? Is that, especially now, if you look at like the best comedians now, they're doing stand-up, but is their end goal to do stand-up forever? Like someone like Michael McIntyre, who's massive now, He's only like 30 or 35. So
What else has he done other than stand up?
nothing, I don't think. But is his end goal to keep doing
Yeah, I don't know.
stand up? Where someone like Eddie Izzard did stand up since, you know, the 80s or something, but he's been in a lot of. I imagine because he's so clever, but he's been in so many films and
Yeah.
TV shows. Just absolute lists and lists and
He's
theatre
turned to acting in a
productions.
big way.
And a lot of stand ups do that. Is there a reason for that? Because they like performing, or is stand up the pedestal that people use to go on to that
Yeah, I
next
suppose
level?
it is in a way, because now, especially in the world we live in today, stand-up is one of those things that that everyone knows about and everyone enjoys, really, at least in a passing sense.
Mhm.
So it's one of those very sort of big, ubiquitous things that people can just go onto and use as a platform to do something else.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's quite sad for people who really like stand-up as an art form or as a medium or whatever, because people are just using it to launch their careers. But
It
I think
helps.
that definitely does happen, though.
It helps in Britain that we have a lot of like panel shows.
Yeah.
And not even comedic panel shows, but like Britain's Got Talent.
Yeah.
Anything where things have to be judged, and there's so many chat shows that people can go on.
Yeah.
And there's so many comedic panel shows that a lot of stand-ups just go like seamlessly go into that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I think people are happy with that. I don't know if many people want to go higher. I suppose if you said to anybody, do you want to be a lead in a film, they'll say yes. But
Well, especially since it gets you so much money. Like, I'm looking at Lee Evans here.
yeah,
I'm still on his page from when we were talking about him a minute ago. And it just caught my eye that his box office data is all here from his stand-up shows.
well,
And-
from all of his stand-up shows.
Well, from 3 of them anyway.
Yeah.
Oh no, this is just from one of them. This is from his recent stand-up show called Roadrunner. And he grossed like 7 million doing that. And that's like a lot of money,
yeah,
but a film grosses much more than that. And even though maybe you won't see as much of it if you do a film, but Lee Evans is the outlier in that he's like one of the most popular comics working in Britain.
yeah,
So I think for most comedians, realistically, being offered a role in a film is going to be much more lucrative than actually just doing stand-up as the only
Yeah,
thing that you're going to
definitely.
do. And it takes a very strong-willed person to like shy away from money, from a big check. I think most people would like to think that, like, oh, you know, money doesn't buy you happiness and stuff like that. But if you offer me like £1 million, I'm going to say, yeah, definitely, I'll take it.
I'm just looking at the stand-up comedy like concerts grossing wise.
Yeah,
Eddie Murphy,
yeah,
$50.5 million for Raw.
really.
Richard Pryor.
How many shows did it do? Did it say?
Well, it got shown in theatres. That's why.
Oh yeah, you could go and watch it recorded. couldn't you?
Like 1,494 theatres showed it. A lot of these places.
Does that ever happen now? I've never heard of that outside of Raw, specifically Raw as well. I don't know if he did it with his other shows.
I don't know.
What was the one where he's wearing a shiny suit? Is that Raw?
Yeah, wearing that purple suit.
Yeah.
I've got it over there, I think. Famously cut out his AIDS joke from that
Yeah, yeah.
because you can't really say that
You
anymore.
can't say that.
Can't say be careful of those gays with their AIDS on their face. Which is basically what he said.
Yeah.
If you look, I'm trying to look at like the top earning comedians. That none of them are just stand-ups on their own. I'm looking here. Jerry Seinfeld tops the list, but he started off doing stand-up, then did Seinfeld.
Seinfeld.
Arguably the most successful American sitcom of all
Yeah.
time. Then he does lucrative stand-ups where he'll do like 2 a year, and they'll be like $500 a thing.
Mm.
He's got so many shows. Same with someone like Chris Rock, done so many films.
These are people who sort of turned into brands. Like
Yeah.
Chris Rock had a sitcom as well. He wasn't in it, but it was his sitcom, like Everybody Hates Chris thing.
Oh yeah,
It was like a sitcom about his life, and he narrated it and stuff.
He's got so many people. They are just brands.
Like, I mean, I suppose any comedian, once you get to a certain point in popularity, it's unrealistic to expect them to just do stand-up. Like, even like talk show circuits and stuff like that, like everyone will do that. And nowadays, podcasting is a very big thing.
Yeah, there's not a lot of money in that, but there's a lot of
building an audience. I
Yeah,
suppose.
it's so easy to
Yeah.
just build an audience.
Like Joe Rogan is a great example of that.
Yeah.
Because he's got one of the biggest podcasts in the world. Like people who go to see his show will be fans of the podcast.
Yeah, and that's how he's managed to make that sort of Death Squad brand
Mm.
because he's so popular.
Mm. And his like people like you say Death Squad, like people in that like Ari Shafir. Like most of the people who go to see Ari Shafir shows, maybe not anymore, but at a certain point, were people who knew him from the podcast. I feel how hot my laptop is. It's insane.
Yeah, it's very warm.
Oh, I need to throw this in an ice bath. That'd be good for it.
Definitely, that's a good idea.
Well, we'll see. But yeah, it's one of those things where you're sort of building an audience, I suppose.
And that's the most important thing, really.
Yeah, it depends who you are. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people who think the most important thing is money, like a lot of comedians. Like we were talking about Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
He just does films now. Like that 1,000 words film that we watched for Bedside.
The PB&J watch.
PB&J, we didn't watch it. But that was like a terrible film, but I'm sure it grossed a lot of money. Let's see if I can find out. Hang on.
Absolutely.
Like he acts now, not necessarily. I mean, maybe it's because he likes it. I don't know, but it's probably because it makes him a lot of money. Apart from that song that he did with Snoop Dogg, of course.
Red light.
Yeah.
Stop right there where you are. I'll give you the top 10 top earning comedians in the UK in 2012.
Okay.
10 Omid Jalili.
Really?
9 Russell Brand. 8 Eddie Izzard. 7 Frankie Boyle. 6 Steve Coogan. There's a guy we've not talked about.
Steve Coogan's really good.
He's a hilarious guy, but again, an absolute brand. Because he does so much now. He does so many films.
Yeah.
And books and Jimmy Carr. Number
Steve
5.
Coogan's one of those people who started off performing characters on stage. Like
yeah,
his
he did like Paul Calf and Alan Partridge.
yeah, Alan Partridge. Like how old was he when he did Alan Partridge? Like he looked like a 40-year-old guy. He
Yeah,
acted
he's
like a
probably
40-year-old
about
guy. He was
25.
like in his 20s. Yeah.
Lee Evans in at 4. Ricky Gervais in at 3. Rowan Atkinson in at 2.
I was wrong, by the way. 1,000 words lost like $50 million.
Sacha Baron Cohen is at number 1.
A lot of these are sort of international comedians, like Russell
Yeah.
Brand, Sacha Baron Cohen.
Sacha Baron
he's
Cohen's
highest
not really
rated.
an actor. Not really a
Not really a
comedian.
stand. I don't know if he even does stand up, does he?
No, I don't think so. But he
Again,
did-
he's a character guy. He does
yeah.
Ali G, Borat. There was a time when his name wasn't like no one knew who he was, but everyone knew who Ali G was.
Yeah, definitely.
Must be very weird to be a guy who could just walk down the street and no one knows who you are. Like you sign your name, no one knows who you are, but the character that you perform by putting on a pair of sunglasses and a cap
Yeah, he's
is
known
like
to
one of the
everybody.
most famous people in the world. Must be very
Booyakasha
weird.
and all that stuff.
Booyakasha, yeah. Me Julie.
Me Julie with the big Babylons.
That used to be huge when I was in school. People
Because-
would always quote it because even though it was making fun of that sort of
It was about
urban
boobs,
lifestyle, yeah, it was.
and you could be like,
Yeah.
which is cool. I can only do that with this hand now.
I could do it with both.
Because I got run over and I crushed it.
Ah,
a little
you
bit. I can't-
fucking idiot.
I can do it a little bit, but
I used to have a teacher who told me to stop doing that because it gave me arthritis. And I was like, myth,
Bullshit.
yeah, boyakasha, whatever.
whatever's
I
bitch.
don't even give a shit. You
That's
feel
such a
me?
funny show.
I do really give a shit.
So do I.
Did all my homework every day.
Every single day.
Actually, in year 7, I actually didn't do any of my homework at all, and every single week I'd be in detention.
What? Can you stop being a badass for just 2 seconds?
Well, that's who I am. I just go with like temporary tattoos. With
What?
those those little cigarette things that you get that are actually just sugar.
Yeah.
I just go in with those and be like, eating those all the way through detention. Don't even give a care.
I remember
I only do half my lines.
there was a kid in like year 9 when everyone had started discovering cigarettes who like thought it'd be hilarious to smoke in class, and then he like lit it
I think you told me about this.
and then realised like I've no idea what I'm going to do with this now because it
This
just
is a really
starts,
silly thing to
starts
do.
billowing into the air obviously, and when you're inside in quite a small little cabin,
Yeah.
it's obvious there's smoke happening.
Yeah. One of the smelliest things you can possibly do as well.
And so he was like, oh shit, fucking bollocks. Absolute moron. Funny though, very funny. Red light,
Yeah,
That-
school was
that-
a very weird time.
School's a weird place, especially for comedy, because it's where you sort of cut your comedy chops.
Yeah, yeah. I think in school there are certain people who are sort of known for being class clowns in quotes.
Well,
And
you
it's-
don't win funniest male lever 2009 if you're not the funniest male
I
lever.
got best hair. That was my gimmick.
Yeah, you've kept that.
Yeah. Check it
Yeah.
out. Yeah. That's
No.
a joke, by the way.
I think it is where you cut your sort of comedy chops, where you learn how to manipulate rooms and know what jokes hit with what people.
Yeah.
Even though you don't really think of it like that, you're not thinking like you're setting up a set. You do realise that, okay, I'm surrounded by these kind of people, they want to hear this kind of joke. Or they want to see me do this kind of thing.
Yeah. I remember I was like in year 11 or something like that. I was like 15, 16. And people would say to me like I'd talk about something seriously and people would be like, Phil, I didn't even know that you could talk seriously, haha. It really pissed me off. Because they'd be like, I was like known at a certain point for just telling jokes all the time.
The
just-
joke guy.
And I like sort of consciously stopped like trying to be funny at a certain point because
People won't take you seriously anymore.
yeah, it sort of got to me in a really weird way. I've not really thought about that for quite a while, but it was a very weird experience where
Guys, I want to talk about the
I
NSA.
just want to talk about Snowden. People are like, do some jokes.
That's not funny, sit down. Yeah, I know what you mean.
But then looking back on it now, the sort of quote funny things that I would do back then
Weren't that funny?
weren't funny at all.
No.
And I remember back then I used to really want to do comedy and be like a stand-up comic and stuff. But then I just sort of lost interest in trying to be funny and trying to
Well,
make
the thing is,
people
even
laugh.
if you are a little bit funny and you're at school, you're going to make people laugh a couple of times a day,
Yeah.
every day. And so that just sort of constant
It makes you want
round
it
of
more.
applause,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
Just makes it like, yeah, I'm good at this, I can do
Yeah.
this easily.
But there are so many people like that in school. Like I think back to the people who I would laugh at.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't even find them that funny. It was just that I was bored at school and I wanted something to
Yeah.
laugh at, so I'd laugh. And if like a few of those people, like I could think of a few people who I would laugh at and people would generally laugh at and were sort of the class clowns.
Yeah.
And if they went on to do comedy, they'd
a
be
fucking
terrible.
disaster. Yeah.
And I'd be guilty for having endorsed their shit, not funny comedy. And it's like, well, it's weird to call it comedy when it's just someone making jokes in a classroom, but I
Yeah.
suppose that is what it is.
At the end of the day, that is what it is. There's nothing different.
Yeah.
But I think I enjoyed being at school. I enjoyed that sort of camaraderie with everybody. That
Yeah.
sort of jokey. Everyone's just having a laugh. We're all here to sort of survive, basically. Even though it's not really that bad. You just want to get in going.
It was quite good, really.
Yeah, in hindsight, it's very
Like
good.
going to a place where all your friends are in one place every single day.
Yeah.
Like you don't really get that after school.
No.
I
Well,
miss that in a way.
When I left year 11, way back when, I knew 98% of the people in my year, to the point where if you'd walk past me playing,
Yeah.
like, hey, whoa, how's it going? You might not do it every time, but you could if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And I would say 98% of those people, again, I've never had a conversation
Yeah,
with.
yeah. Me, like I found my Leavers book a few weeks ago.
Lost
I was
mine.
reading through it, and people were always writing like, "I
Yeah.
love you," like,
God,
"Keep in
yeah.
touch, promise to keep in touch."
Let's
and
have
I will.
sex one day, yes.
Yeah,
question mark.
yeah,
And I was
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
How many more of this is getting boring
Yeah.
on the page? Yes, of course.
And it just made me so like I just felt like shit because like there was all these people who had said that I was going to keep in touch with, and I never did.
Yeah, but on the same hand, they never did either. It's just
Well, yeah, no, it's
the nature of the beast.
I'm
Everyone
not
just
blaming myself for it, but it's one of those things where school is that environment where you can sort of be friends with loads of people
Yeah.
effortlessly, and you sort of don't realise after that it takes some effort to keep friends, really.
you don't really need that many friends.
Well, no, I think we've talked about this before on the podcast. I think we might have talked about this on episode 1.
You just need people
like-
that sort of get you through the day.
I think most people have like 3 friends on average. That's a statistic I heard.
You
I'm
have,
not sure
like,
if that's true.
3 or 4 good friends, and just
Well,
people that if you see, you're like, you're right.
Yeah, you have loads of people who are your sort of friends within quotes.
Like I've got like
acquaintances,
700 friends on Facebook,
Yeah.
but I'm friends with about 10 of them.
Yeah,
I don't know.
depends what situation you're in as well.
Yeah.
How do we get onto this, friends?
We're talking about school. and how you can be really funny at school.
I always feel whenever we go off on a tangent like this, I always feel like we've got to rope it back. But then maybe we shouldn't. Maybe it's good to just chat
It's good
about
to
shit.
tangent from time to time.
Yeah. What else is there to talk about comedy?
What are your thoughts on stand-up courses, like courses to make you a comedian?
Oh
People
yeah, that's
who
all very weird.
There are people who study comedy.
Yeah, that's sort of because, like I said earlier, one of the things about stand-up comedy is candor and honesty. It's a very dishonest thing to approach candor and honesty from a sort of premeditated standpoint. Like, here's how I'm going to appear to be honest, and here's how I'm going to appear to be candid. So there's something about it that I don't like, but maybe that's just because I have this idea that stand-up should be honest, and maybe it shouldn't. I don't know. Maybe there's validity in just the sort of performance half of it.
I don't know. I'm not sure what the point of it is. I think it might be good. The only time it would really be worth it is for like gaining confidence. Really, it's just there to like point you in the right direction as to how to deliver material, rather than you have to go into it with some material or some desire, or you can't just turn up and expect to be a comedian, because that's just never.
I think I don't know how like valid or effective any of these courses are, but despite that, they'll still remain popular because you're selling a dream, aren't you? You're saying
Yeah, definitely.
that's all it is. That's the only reason that these things are going to be popular and will continue to be a lucrative thing for people to set up, is because people feel like they're buying a course in like, here's how to achieve your dream, and it's a realistic thing because you've got like 100 people around. Like I've been watching a lot of Charlie Kaufman films recently.
Yeah.
And I was watching Adaptation, and that film is about it's about Charlie Kaufman. Nicolas Cage plays Charlie Kaufman.
Yeah.
And it's about his struggle to adapt a book into a film, and it's him sort of struggling with his inability to write, his writer's block and stuff like that. It's really interesting, like meta, like you're sort of looking at the experience of this film being written and stuff like that. And halfway through the film, his brother in the film introduces him to this guy who has like a seminar for screenwriting, and he says in the film, like, the reason that so many people vouch for it is because people feel like they're like you're selling hope to people, and that's the reason. Like there will be hundreds of people in a seminar. You go to a seminar that you're going to be in a crowd of 100 people who are taking notes and are really serious about it, and who come out of it saying that was amazing, that was brilliant, but they're never going to go on to do anything because it's not necessarily effective in any way.
That's interesting.
And it's the same. I think it's probably true of these stand-up comedy courses where people will vouch for it, but because comedy takes like decades to get into and to get good at, you can never be sure that the people who are vouching for it are ever going to be any good, and they're probably not, because I don't think you can learn academically how to tell jokes. Like, I don't think there's such a thing as like a comedy robot.
Most like comedians that I've heard talk about these courses have been very negative towards them.
Yeah, and you can imagine why comedians especially would be negative towards them.
Well, the thing is, if you
sort of
spent
hitting in the face of your craft,
if you spent 20 years of your life perfecting how to perform in front of a crowd, and then all of a sudden Dave Twatbag, who's done a course at Brighton, has got his third out, came in and just thinks he's the best shit on the block
just because he's done a course.
Yeah,
And he's got a certificate.
That motherfucker.
It's like having a black belt in comedy.
Yeah.
But it's not really a black belt because
that's
the crowd hasn't. Well, that's really a black belt. Yeah. That's not a black belt. That's a framed bit of paper. It's not a belt. You can't wear that.
No,
I'm confused.
In a box.
I'm very confused.
I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, the thing is though with that is that I say it seems almost instinctively that stand-up comedy is a thing that you can't teach and you can't learn. You have to do it.